Keep looking at the wrong clock.
Right?
Oh,
I
somebody
forgot
should
to set
fix
it
that.
again. Guess it's time for me to break down and buy a new clock.
Isn't it though? They did it really well.
What is that?
It's just one I found on the internet. It's a body kit on an 08 Mustang to look like a 69 GT500.
That's what you guys have.
And done very, very well.
That's nice. Sean was dying today.
Did we get his bike out again?
Talking
The whole
about
car was listed on Kijiji.
a car from the late 90s as being a classic.
Let's see if this Canadian know.
Does he still have his VMAX?
That's right.
His bike?
Who?
Your husband,
My wife.
isn't he, used to own a bike? Not VMAX, isn't it Harley?
Yeah, Harley.
Harley,
Yeah, he had a
V-Rod.
V-Rod, yeah.
No more?
No, he sold it when we moved here and sold the store and cries a little every spring over it.
Oh, now I'm just gonna have to ride past his house.
Yeah. Yeah, just ride past the store a couple of times.
Comes back into the 50-cent motor. Those are new tires.
Sacrifices we have to make.
That's right.
Well, Mr. Chair, this one is, I forgot to reset it. It's every 3 months. I gotta bump it up by 5 minutes. 3.
Well, since
Really
we're
3
talking
minutes.
budget tonight, we can see if we can find an extra $10 for it.
Well, I've been willing to donate a clock. for
I
sure,
was
you
gonna
know.
say, yeah, I'm sure I could find one.
It saves me climbing up there every 3 months to justify 5 minutes.
Well, I got just about 6 o'clock on my sundial anyway, so we'll call this meeting to order. All participants to be informed that this meeting is being,
It's already recording.
oh, it's already recording now.
Yeah.
The meeting is being recorded. Teresa, could you please list the attendees verbally?
I have Foreman Patrick Taylor. I have Counselor Cindy Oram. I have Counselor Kyle McIntosh. I have Deputy Mayor Brian Gus. Hello, Brian. Snuck in. Mayor Rob McDonald and Counselor Jackie Northey, Recording Secretary, sorry, Loretta Paget, and CAO Teresa Fuller, and I have Stu Sackeld on Zoom. And so far, I think that's all I got connected by Zoom.
Nobody wants to discuss budget.
Yeah. No public hearing, any additions or agenda amendments to the agenda?
If we can just kind of maybe add a commentary for additional meeting or next meeting in like section 11. Because the auditor wasn't sure if they were gonna have the statements ready for the 19th.
Okay.
If we wanted to maybe consider booking one more, or because they have to present the audited financial statements before the end of April.
Okay.
So I guess audit meeting. Thank you.
Care to move the agenda as amended? Thank you, Brian. All in favor? Carrie? Yep.
Names in this next section a few times.
Minutes of the last meeting.
Looks good to me.
I may consider that a motion.
You sure can.
All in favor? Carrie? No delegation, no bylaw. Unfinished business, municipal sustainability operating grant application.
So basically, the current budget has the municipal sustainability operating grant as revenue within it and the carry forward for unspent expenses. Enclosed are the recommended expenses for the application. And so within it, there was a carry forward of 34,796, bless you, and 39 cents. And the items from last year that were to be billed through on the MSI grant were the policing requisition of 23,572, the impeller and lift station repair of 6,300, and water meter purchases of 3,000. And then the balance of the additional items included would be for 2022. So basically what's happened is because the items weren't spent or purchased in 2021, that it's carried forward into 2022 and considered part of the application. And basically the website upgrade is just based on a higher end quote that I received so far. That's not to say that we would be, like, we're still pricing out website upgrades. And then as well, the laptop, well, that also includes, like, they quote us high because they get it from the States, so they don't know what the exchange is. Plus it has additional like software fees. So if I was to say, like, I kind of looked at it where if I purchased a laptop from Staples, who'd be the IT person setting it all up? Probably me. So it's worth it to have the service as well, with because we use Trinus for a lot of our computers, and then they have access to logons and everything in service. So
is Parkland Library requisition per capita?
yes.
Okay, so it's not negotiable, it's nothing.
No, it's based on capita, and the amount per person or per capita kind of stayed roughly the same, but their population amounts increased modestly. But I think overall it kind of dropped a smidge, but we can certainly look at that as we go through the budget.
No, I was just wondering if it's requisition.
Yeah.
Assumed it was.
Yeah. So, and the source of the funding is the municipal sustainability operating grant or taxation in the event that we don't cover it through the grant. Was there any questions about the MSI grant?
I have a question about your MSA comes from the government, or
Yes. Yeah,
and does
It's-
it come just for anything we want it to use it for? Or-
it's a set amount based on population.
Okay.
So the province has an annual funding formula based on population. And so our allotment has been at 59,095 for 2 years now, give or take. And it's projected to remain the same for 2023.
Okay.
And then beyond that, the funding structure changes to a different terminology. It's something about the local something. So MSI is done by the end of 2023. There's a new funding
Oh, I
that
see.
starts in 2024, and they rename it basically. It's kind of like retreading the tires.
So is the MSI grant and taxes are only accounted on funding each year?
For our revenue?
Yeah.
Primarily, our revenue is taxation, grants, and then, of course, the water fees.
Right. So, but is that the major grant we get? Do we get other ones?
It's one of the primary ones.
Okay.
And then we get federal gas tax,
Okay.
which is also having a new name,
Okay.
evolving to a new name as well. And that one typically is about 50,000 a year.
Okay.
And so that one is more along the lines of like, it covers windows or enhancements where
Mm.
they really have a bit of a flavor for like green technology and stuff. But there is green technology through the MCCAC, which is the Municipal Climate Change Action Center.
Okay.
But a lot of it too it's like 20% funding, most of it, but we can certainly provide you with more information.
Yeah, no, I was curious. as
Yeah,
to
yeah.
what it
Is
was.
there a capital component to?
Can I start?
Like, is there?
Yes,
Yes.
so this is just the operating component.
Okay.
And then the capital component is, we usually include that in as part of our capital budget. And so I kind of have started some of the capital budget in preparation for our next meeting. However, having the reserve updated listings for what our reserves are at would be really helpful. So I might have to stall it off until after we get our audited financial statements. So I know exactly what we've got in our reserves. But our MSI capital component is 120,510 this year. And then we have $22,813 from last year that was unspent.
And you can carry it from
Yep.
forever.
No.
Usually a maximum of 4 years.
Okay.
But I think if you are like marshaling it there, say like collecting it for a specific project, I'm told that it is possible. You just have to make sure that you inform them what your plan is.
So not that it matters for this particular decision, but going forward into the budget, do you have any idea what the numbers are for last year? Like, did we run a deficit? Is there a surplus? Like, have we got any
From the
2021?
2021, so in our bank account?
Yeah, well, I mean, so we have a budget and there's the actual, are we,
You know what, I believe we've run at a surplus. Because, well, right now, well, it doesn't feel like a surplus because our account is low. I think we're sitting at about 150,000, but we're still waiting for a $286,000 payment from the feds. And then also
For the lagoon project?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then a grant payment as well for our MSI capital, which was right around 274,000. So
we were running, or we have.
we have a surplus in place, and actually our reserves are higher than what our auditor reflects as well, because we haven't moved a lot of the revenues into the reserves.
I mean, I realize until he, actually hands you the audited books, you don't know what the final.
Yeah, well, and see, we had originally anticipated accessing like 104,000 from our like a sewer reserve for the project, but we didn't need to access that. So we still have that in reserves. So that's kind of also a bit of part two to the budget discussion where
Yeah.
I had sent the copies of the rework notes and the just additional notes about things that could be removed from the budget.
Can you explain the cutoff date for the policing requisition? Because I see we've got 47,000 and change marked, but it's across 2 different payments, one for 2022, presumably the back half of last year. And then I'm guessing the front half kind of continuing. So can you just explain why there's 2 amounts?
There, it actually is very confusing.
Awesome.
So you're lucky that Darlene and I and the auditor have kind of worked through some of the numbers. So last year's, their fiscal year basically runs from April 1st to March 31st. So originally, when we had heard we were going to get billed for the policing requisition, we were told that we were going to be billed January 1st or January 2nd of the following year. But none of us got our billings until the end of March. And so that seems to be the standard. And so last year, when we generated the MSI application, we included the full years, which were the three months from 2020, 9 months from 2020, and then 3 months from
2023.
so we have a wraparound going on.
Right.
And so for now, I've just included the full 23,572. There may be some adjustments to that because when we first started paying the policing, we had opted to implement a policing tax. And so we collected a whole year's worth of policing tax. So we actually have a carry forward of revenue of about $4,000 that should be applied against this 23,572. So that will be adjusted within our audited financial statements for 2021. And so that figure will adjust. And then moving forward, this whole amount could go down, I suspect, by 4,000. And with the 2022-2023 portion, or so the $23,572 has the full amount from last year's, including like the 9 months plus 3 months of this year.
Mhm.
And then this year, this 2022-2023 is basically from April 1st to December 31st, because the full bill is actually $31,000. And then the following 3 months will be in next year. So we are gonna move to true it up and bill what's actually in each year. But it's just kind of confusing.
Transition in the first year.
Making the transition,
Yeah.
exactly. So we're expecting that this overall total will drop, like I say, roughly by about $4,000.
So then next year we'll be paying more to finish up this year.
Correct. So I believe it caps out at 47,000 for the full year next year,
That's the jump.
the final jump.
That's the final jump.
Yeah.
That's- Although, is there any assurance that that is, or they can raise it?
None.
They can raise.
And truly,
They
if
just
the
said you're
province
right.
pushes the Alberta Provincial Police Force, it could go higher. It's hard to say, like, it's all speculation. They're assuring us or trying to provide verbal assurances that it won't jump higher if it's APP, which is Alberta Provincial Police Force. But speculatively, none of us believe that.
So this is a straight download from the provincial government.
Correct. Yeah, so in the past, municipalities under 5,000 were not billed policing. And then basically that was about 20% of the municipalities in the province. And so they evolved to where a lot of the other municipalities basically brought forward concerns. And so therefore the legislation was changed and it was
I can
implemented.
see that though. Really,
It would be really hard if you had a population of 5,500.
that's right, yeah,
That's,
yeah.
I can understand that.
Do we receive any extra boots on the ground or anything for, jumping up to by next year $40,000?
That's absolutely what they promised us, was boots on the ground. What we got was shoes in the office.
Not even actually. Right now, there's some transitions going on and we are not aware of how it's gonna look.
I don't even think they are.
The detachment commander, so Corporal Grant Glacier, was finished.
Oh, no, I wasn't talking about actual members. They
Well-
hired another civilian administrator.
Okay.
But the
Two
thing about it,
part-time
there
administrators.
internally, there was an administrator that basically transferred to Stettler. And so now we don't have a detachment commander and we're actually awaiting information
That was short one.
from them, but there is rumblings, I'll call it, that the Bashaw detachment and Stettler detachment may be combined. Nothing's confirmed though.
Do we receive any pro rating or anything when we are running on less than a full staff?
No.
Oh, it's a fair question.
It is.
No, it's just like, here's your bill.
Oy.
So, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think there is gonna be some, well, in the next 4 or 5 months, we'll hear more, I think.
Well, and as their fiscal year wraps up.
Yeah, March 31st is their end, so.
Yeah.
Well, I can make that motion.
Thank you, Brian. All in favor?
Noticed it. Do you care about spelling in the minutes?
Sorry?
Do you care about spelling in the minutes? Damien Carrick is actually K-U-R, not Carrick.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that matters. Just,
Okay, well, we can fix that.
yeah, it's no big deal.
We'll await the angry letter from them.
It's actually
I think
K-U-R-E.
he's one we want to get.
Just
I complain about when my name is misspelled, yes.
I don't know if it matters.
And that's on the signature page too.
Yeah.
Darn.
I can get that printed too.
We'll have it changed and then we'll.
It's not that big a deal. I just didn't know if you wanted it or not.
Okay.
7.2, everybody's favorite, the budget.
I've been looking forward to this.
Not me.
I'll give you the hard copy. You can. I'll probably just share the screen.
Oh, okay. I just want to
Just to grab the, okay, yeah. Go grab. the
Five
copy
$5,000.
and
We'll wait.
the change.
Cause I'm not making.
Ignoring the 75,000.
There might be some, but I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm gonna share the screen on here. There we go. Okay, so I guess we'll start with the council and legislative. Basically, a lot of it is pretty much the same, other than council or Canada Pension Plan was just bumped up a little bit higher. And then the meeting fees council, it was a little bit lower last year just because we were down a council member. Lynn had finished at the end of May, I think it was, or something, so that's why that's lower. And then travel subsistence and course fees. I've basically put it at 1,600 unless you folks figure you'll be doing additional traveling that you'll be submitting for. We can certainly adjust it. Last year there was a bit more where I think Penny or like whoever was the CAO rep would submit for mileage or, you know, whatever it may be, or even attending parades, things like that. So, yeah, but we've started with 1,600, but you know, if you guys figure that you would like more, we can certainly arrange to budget more in there.
What does it mean by community contributions?
Those basically are like the Legion, for example, for Remembrance Day, we give them $40. The Chamber of Commerce, this is a combination of our annual chamber membership and Bashaw bucks. The Bus Society is their annual contribution of $5,000. And then the awards for the grade 5 and grade 7, we pitch in $50. And then staff functions, along with that basically is in the past, we used to attend the Victim Services Gala, or we would do something at Christmas time and have council members and spouses and staff and spouses attend. So that just gives us some funds.
Just take everybody and crash a wedding.
Totally, there's $1,000 right there.
Yeah, and so then $800 so that, you know, if there's a need for purchasing food or something like that for an event that council puts on, or if we decide to have a budget town hall meeting where we're gonna have snacks so that people can come and talk to us about the budget, you know, because it's so stimulating. So I don't know if you guys have any questions on that. It's a little bit higher than last year, but really not terrible. And I'm not sure why it happened with my numbers on the bottom there that it says 27,000. I think it's a link, sorry.
I see the Alberta Municipalities Conference is blank out. Is this something that we historically attend or don't attend or?
It's included on there. In the past, there hasn't been a ton of interest in attending. Just because it's, well, but that's not to say that in the future, or if you wanted, if there was council members that were interested in attending. I know the one year when the NDP came into office, myself and a couple of council members, we kind of had a bit more of a vested interest in attending because it was a change in government and we wanted to have some dialogue about some specific issues. But it's past councils, it wasn't an interest. But in the same token, if at any point in time you feel you'd like to need a plan for funds in there to attend, it certainly is an option for sure.
I went to one
Ben,
and I thought it was worth attending.
did you? I wondered about that when I saw the list.
To me, it's something that the mayor and CAO, if they have the desire, should be going to regularly. I mean, it's a chance to get FaceTime with the RCMP, those one-on-ones with deputy commissioners of Waukee. You get time with ministers, right? Things, and of course, opportunities to have that off the cuff networking with colleagues from other areas. So I would be interested in seeing what a budget line for mayor and CAO to go would look like if there's interest from those parties.
When
Okay.
is it?
September.
Expensive?
Remember? I don't
In
think
the past,
Hotel.
hotel rooms
Yeah.
usually around about $200 a night.
And where is it?
Usually Edmonton or Calgary. And then I think the registration used to be roughly about $800 a person. So it's not one of the
Cheaper
more
ones.
cost effective conferences, but I will include a note to obtain pricing.
I'd just be curious to see what it looks like to get you there. And then with that, my other question, and I suspect it's irrelevant, but I was looking through other sections of budgets and looking at our memberships in different groups. And one of the ones that I saw we had membership in, I'm guessing associate membership is rural municipalities. So is that something we ever attend any of their functions or?
So with AUMA and or what used to be AUMA and now is Alberta Municipalities and then Rural Municipalities Association, they're basically lobbying groups. And then we also participate in trade programs for them. So the AUMA/Alberta Municipalities, which they've kind of changed their name. We have our aggregate energy agreements with them and all of our insurance provisions, plus the ability to have, like it's an annual membership where you get benefits for decreased pricing on tires, fuel, all of those kind of things. And the same thing with the Rural Municipalities Association. We participate with 8760 and an aggregate energy agreement as well with the Rural Municipalities Association. And we have cell phones through them as well as accessing various trade savings as well. We haven't, like the ability to attend both or either conferences is there. It just never has been of significant interest for,
Council.
yeah. So that's not to say that, because like rural municipal, well, I'm sorry, I probably don't recall what dates and times of the year.
I think they do 2 a year, the spring and the
Yeah,
fall.
so, and then like they also have additional like spring leaders caucus and things like that, or risk management and, but.
I know before, my first couple of terms, we always sent 2 people to AUMA.
It's probably good for networking if nothing else. So maybe we should put something for 2 people then for next fall. Whoever those 2 are. You can't go.
And for rural municipalities as well.
I don't know, do you think that?
I'm actually curious to see what the cost is to send someone.
A huge cost?
No, it would be expensive.
Oh, would it?
I'm questioning how much that.
Oh,
Will
I
we
see.
receive more benefit from RMA, given that its membership is counties and our neighbors are all counties? Like Alberta municipalities, I mean, Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer.
Yeah, so
To me, we'd have more in common with our neighboring counties than we would the big cities.
Well, I guess I can't say that I've honestly ever attended the Rural Municipalities Association. But I have attended some of the different like training sessions that they've put on for various things. And so I usually would just watch for content related that I find applicable. Attending the AUMA conference. it was interesting, dare I say, and good networking and stuff, but I tend to spend a bit more time, not quite as much politicking. Dare I say, and with the evolution of like COVID and whatnot, it's more like I find it's an ongoing balance to justify the time out of the office too. So that's where it's a struggle often for me, but yeah. And think
Is
about,
it I don't know, like, are you going to the conference this Thursday at the LGA?
no, I usually choose between the LGA or the Society of Local Government Managers. And in order to maintain my designation, I opted for the Society of Local Government Managers.
I'm just wondering if when RMA or AUMA actually needs Teresa to attend, or if it's something we could send mayor and deputy mayor.
And then budget for
Yeah.
Teresa to do.
Whatever, when she
Well,
does.
and I've often also, like, the Local Government Administrative Association is also a really great training ground for additional, like for staff wise as well. Whatever capacity versus, because it's like they just talk about how implementing various practices, and there's a lot of networking, and it's typically smaller municipalities, but there's some larger municipalities that attend too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just on a cost factor.
Communities our size too.
All over, I suppose, like a Delburn or wherever. Eckville. I just have a quick question. In 2021, community contributions were budgeted at $0. It appears to me. Despite the actual being about 5,500, was there a rhyme or a reason for that, or is that just a glitch in the matrix?
Probably a little bit of COVID too, because you don't really know what was gonna happen.
My wonder was about the bus society, because
Like the bus, they received 5,000.
it's my understanding they always get.
You know, I
5,000.
think it was just an oversight.
Okay, just a glitch.
Yeah, sorry.
I know.
Yeah, I was very, okay. And then I have one last one, and I'm guessing this is incidentals, but in a previous meeting, his worship suggested running an event like coffee with council or something like that. Would that fall under incidentals if we chose to
Correct.
proceed with an event?
Alrighty, ready to move on to admin. So the revenue portion there, like the residential, non-residential, and the taxation, we leave that blank so that we can do the calculation for what taxes are to be. And so the Cameras and Area Lodge Authority is at $830 this year. And right now we're projecting the ASS, or the Alberta School Foundation, to be $221,548.44. Last year it was 227. Basically what happened is they tend to do adjustments after we get our tax notices out. And so we ended up under levying the previous year, so we had to catch it up by $5,709.83. So we're hoping that this year we'll just keep checking. Yeah, anyway, and grants in lieu and residential grants in lieu. I just have to touch base with Darlene Sinclair to find out what we actually anticipate receiving. It's been pretty stable, but as you can see, last year we budgeted to receive $17,215, and we only actually received $16,993. However, the residential grants in lieu was a little bit higher than we expected. So it's that one is a little frustrating because they're like, send us the full bill, but we're only going to pay what we feel like. So anyway, more to come on that.
We're allowed to do that as individuals, right?
Yeah, when we're supporting the education requisition, it's usually not. They just take it. Anyway, penalties and costs on taxes. We budgeted 25,000. We received 23,568. So I guess in essence, we could lower that a smidge, but in the same token, it's a pretty close estimation.
Your ballpark on it.
Yeah. Fines is another one where it's a little tricky because you just really don't know. And then they did a substantial reduction in what they're giving us. What they're collecting is the same as always, but some of what they give us has reduced.
So would these be like bylaw fines?
Anything from speeding tickets
Okay.
to whatever that is in proximity to the municipality.
Okay.
And then the franchise fee, this is an actual calculation based on like what we've received from them so far. So that's why it's a bit higher than what last year's projection. And then return on investments, we are predicting lower just because we have less cash in the account. Right, so we had more cash for longer periods of time in 2021. So therefore, there was a bit more. So when you think of the operational account, because anything that's in the reserves, the revenue just rolls into the reserve and stays there. And then the provincial conditional grant there at 93,891. That one is the carry forward of 34,796 of the 2021 MSI that we hadn't spent. And then our current MSI of 59,095. And our general services and supplies revenues, again, this one is really tricky to predict. So we typically under budget just in case, because we just really don't know. And then licenses and permits, 200, rentals and lease revenue, 19,400. This is where the contribution from the tower lease goes into. So that's why there's a nice little bump up there. Where typically we would receive 9,500 as budgeted, where we got our first payment last year of 10,500. So it bumped it up to 19,000.
If I can go back for a minute on licenses and permits, revenue was about $229 last year. Is this things like pet licenses?
No.
No, what licenses would these be?
Pet licenses are in a different area.
Okay, this is just something else altogether.
Yes.
Okay. Sure, there's more pets than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this isn't where the pet revenue
Have an
comes in.
extra at the store.
That's a good question. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer off the top of my
No,
head.
that's okay. Like I said, I was just like, I'm sure we have more than
Can
20
you
pets
put
in
a
this
circle that
town.
and put a note on it?
That's not development permits, is it? That's
No,
not much money.
No,
I really hope not on that one too.
Yeah.
no, it's something else. Yeah. And then utility penalties, again, like we budgeted 4,500 last year, we received 10,118. We budgeted lower last year because of COVID. There was a section of the year where we weren't billing people penalties, so that's why we estimated lower. So the actual was significantly higher what we received, but in the same token, we like to be, well, work on being realistic.
Noticing any change in that right now?
Once we get a BVR to you, but then the BVR isn't very valuable until it has the budget numbers in it. So, so my apologies there.
No worries.
This is where the next section is the development permits. That's where our revenue is there. 1,200. And last year there was 1,425. And really last year was an unusual year as well. We did have increased, like I think we were up to 20 or 22 development permits. This year into the quarter, we're sitting at 1. So, so we're being on the conservative side.
And this is $75 a pop.
Yeah. Yeah, which that really does need to be reviewed as well, is when you think of the current application on the docket and all the time and energy that's involved.
But just thinking about a standard, a deck or something, to me, you're putting in at least $75 worth of work to go over that. So
Yeah.
that's the area that.
Well, and it depends on the individual making the application. Because often they'll come in and ask a multitude of questions before they actually submit the application. So there's a lot of,
So if we were to look at changing that fee, when would we look at doing that? That would be,
basically that's where the challenge is with our master rates and schedules bylaw. So if we were to take, typical municipalities take that whole bylaw and say, these are the new fees for everything for the next year, but then we'd have to assign it a new number and it wouldn't connect to all of our other, so how we changed the water bill where we implemented an amendment to the bylaw so that everything talks. That's basically one of the projects that we have on the go at this juncture in time. So basically anything that references master rates and schedules bylaw 760-2014. If it says that in the bylaw, I have to pull that bylaw, take that number out, reference it as master rates and schedules bylaw generically, and then go back to the master rates and schedules bylaw. Then the master rates and schedules bylaw would be whatever sequence we are, 809-2022 would be the new number for the master rates and schedules bylaw, or whatever it would be.
would you see an increase to the permit fee? And again, I think the $75 is very low considering the amount of work that has to go into a deck. Would increasing it whatever amount detrimentally impact the number of people on her?
Small town, they wouldn't be happy, but you know, it's definitely not out of the realm to consider upping it to $100. I know some municipalities do it based on percentage of what the project value is, but I can't see that being popular. Because in essence, your development permits the revenue from it in some places goes potentially towards putting infrastructure into new developments, right? So if you're going to use it as a business case situation, but again, being a smaller municipality and stuff, you're just going to push people to be more non-compliant.
Yes, yes.
Right? And where right now it can be a challenge, right? So you don't want to make it too prohibitive. And sales of land last year, basically there was 2 lots that were sold for a total of $54,761.91. We don't typically include that as revenue in the operating budget because the intent is that anytime we sell land, we want to squirrel that cash away. Unless, of course, this council wants to function differently. Okay. And office rent, basically 5,200. This is behind the Fire Hall Museum. And so with general administration, the pink section there is all like connected in where, so all of the administrative staff and whatnot are embedded into here by percentages.
I think you mean gray.
Yeah, or on the sheet is gray, but on our thing is pink. Sorry. I meant to give you guys color. My bad.
This is pink. This is pink.
Yeah. So there's administrative course fees at 3,000, travel and subsistence 1,000, freight, postage, phone, land titles 7,000. And again, that just varies as well. Like the postage and phone is pretty constant, but land titles can kind of fluctuate how many times we actually have to print copies or whatever, because they typically send us transfers back. Advertising, printing, and subscriptions, and then municipal memberships. This is the Government Finance Officers Association, the Local Government Administrative, I think it's, yeah, Administrators Association, Rural Municipalities Association, the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, the Development Officer, and the Society of, well, it's actually SLGM, Society of Local Government Managers. And basically there's different course offerings and resources that are accessed through pretty much all of them. So we used to also have FCM, but that one is a federal. And it's been like, we haven't had anything that we've really accessed, so we kind of rolled that one off. And professional consulting basically has the whole mix of everything on there, website upgrade, assessor fees, web hosting, server monitoring, payroll processing. Smart List Builder is a financial software component, diamond maintenance plan, utility safety membership, mapping systems.
So when it talks about server monitoring and updates at 21,000.
Yep.
That's something happens off-site.
Yes. Yeah. And then the audit fees are typically right around 18,000, and they have a small bill at the beginning of the year, and then the bigger bill comes towards in November. So they do a pre-audit and then a final audit.
So is that why like the last year actual was 2,800? Is that pre-billing?
We haven't gotten the bill.
Because like I just see
Yeah,
we got one small number and two big ones. I was just
yeah. You can circle that one and I'll check with Scott as well.
maybe they give us a deal while you're.
Not a chance. Sometimes what happens too is it often gets coded into professional and consulting.
Okay.
So that 56,000 under professional consulting services for last year, that it might have gotten put in there.
Sure, just doing coding.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the legal might be, unless we used more legal last year, did we?
Sorry, the legal.
Yeah.
We predicted about 8,000 and then we ended up accessing 14,842.
Yeah,
I don't know about anyone else, but I think the 10,000 number might need to go a little higher.
I
Well-
disagree.
Yeah,
I think it needs to go a lot higher.
a lot.
I would double it.
The 10,000?
Yeah.
Well,
We have some numbers for the first 3 months. Already.
no,
Oh,
nothing crazy,
nothing crazy.
nothing crazy.
I feel like we've already used legal 2 or 3 times.
Well, I know
this year.
dialoguing in the fall there, in around November before a certain presentation, there was additional dialogue. However, the firm and / the individual engaged tended to spend a lot of time and bill us a lot for information we didn't necessarily require. So now we're tightening the scope when we have a dialogue with this individual.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is more applicable to an application specific versus getting legal feedback. And the legal feedback, we're just tightening the scope so that we're not being overcharged for just extraneous evaluation of process.
I think our big use of legal is yet to come. Is my hunch.
Yeah,
Maybe.
well, we can certainly look at bumping it up, but
I think if we spent 14 and change last year, I think that would be a starting point to budget with. So I can't see this being a year with less legal than last. Although I do appreciate that you're
Yes.
really reining the lawyers in.
yes, because certain lawyers will go to town if you don't tighten your scope on what you actually are asking them to research and provide information on. And there was a couple of situations versus, just one that was in November, December. There was other situations specific to like application, like water well applications and stuff. Which that one I saved a bunch of cash on and did a lot of the research myself. They just said, hey, give me a list of all these documents and any references to and create an appendices with references to certain dialogue data. And I did that to save some cash. So, but
I think whatever Teresa thinks, I mean, you have a handle on how it's going as far as
Yeah,
the, whether it's 10 or 14 or 20.
well, I was like, with the rework, I got you guys down to 3.48, you know?
Oh, and I like that number. That's-
Yeah.
It's like, we put another 5 grand in there, we're gonna be back up there.
I'm liking that number.
But I like the actuals to be close too.
Yeah,
Well, but that was my question as far as before we started. You know, where were we last year? If we were in
Yeah.
a surplus area.
You're in a
then
surplus,
to me, that tells me that we have some.
Wiggle room.
yeah. Yeah,
because
and
then we're saying that, you know, the actual was under budget in the big picture, the big number, and then I think we have room to.
So if needed, we could access that surplus for
Well,
an additional
that's
5,000
correct.
for legal, should we need it.
That's correct.
well, and as we monitor everything moving forward, we watch the codes and try and stay within the codes. And so once the budget numbers are in the balance variance report or the BVR, then it comes back to council and we go through within the quarter. It's like, okay, why is this high? Why is this lower? Why are we under, or are we on budget for this or that?
Yeah.
And then you look at it by line, but then also sometimes you end up being over on a code, but still fine in the department.
Right.
So like
And-
within the fire department, for example, or this segment as an administrative department, you know, sure, some lines might be a little higher, but it's offset by other funds within the department.
And again, the really, the number that's really meaningful is at the end and.
Yeah.
Would this section include bringing in a professional planner to assist us? Like, where would we see that as a?
I believe it's either in this one or community services department. It's farther on.
Yeah, I did see it someplace.
So I was looking for it.
So, and that's where like the planning services versus legal. Just because planning services were inherently lower than what the legal was. Was
Which
slash
I
is.
mean, I'm guessing is probably still a trade-off in our favor. Like planning
If our
services
planning
would be
process is
lower
solid,
than,
then,
yeah,
yeah,
It's a lower dollar.
Get more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
and then that way we also get the advice to limit the scope for the questions on legal, so if legal, there's still access legal and stuff, right, but we tighten the scope on it, so we're not, you know, paying for over information that isn't necessarily required.
Because I really do think you need to be trying to aim for that 4% somewhere in there. I don't think we want much more than that.
that's usually my magic number. And 4% this year comes in well under inflation,
So
so.
it stays within inflation.
So like you guys had the copy, do you want to go through more of this line by line, or are there some areas you want to target specifically in the best interest of time, or had specific questions?
I feel cheated if we didn't.
Whatever your preference is, you know, because it's like we can certainly bounce around a bit if we need to, or the interest is there.
I know I'm learning lots going through it this way.
Yeah,
This is our hazing.
Yeah.
well, you know, really,
This is the George
It's one of
Clough,
those-
understand it, not in style.
well, some places also do priority-based budgeting too, right? Where it's like, okay, if your priority within your strategic plan is updated communication, enhanced connectivity with your website, you know, then it would be kind of a slam dunk where you look at, okay, the administrative section here has this, this, and this. We're golden, we move on, right? Or if protective service is a focus, or, you know, that type of thing. But in the same token, you know, our strategic plan is very basic in nature, because like our last dialogue with council, it was through COVID, right? So a lot of it was, focus on connectivity through the website and whatnot, and status quo with maintaining infrastructure and fiscal responsibility. So there is definitely a flare of fiscal responsibility in here. However, there's a side of aging infrastructure that is requiring significant repair too. So that's where my rework notes kind of comes in and stuff too. But that being said, I'm getting the feeling that we can just kind of continue, and then I'll go a little bit faster. If there's any other questions as we go, then you can just let me know. Maintenance and janitor, we just throw in some for supplies and repairs and maintenance. This actually has roof shingles in there and the furnace cleaned and front flooring replacement for a portion of the floor there.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, so that's why it's a smidge higher in there.
Yeah.
And like these items are kind of lower in nature, so they're not typical where we would run them through a capital budget. And then insurance, there's just a little bit of an increase there. And office supplies, it's a combination of paper and really with the 4,000 there, I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head with what we used, but it's like there's, I think the copies, like photocopier copies are run through there too, as far as I recall. And then energy power, we've always typically been pretty bang on. As I mentioned, we're part of an aggregate energy agreement. So there's just a bit of a modest increase in there, nothing too crazy. And because that's for the office, right? And then tax adjustments, this is the one where we basically expense back in what's not paid. So when we looked at that grants in place of taxes earlier as revenue, this is where we kind of do a guesstimate of what they're not going to pay us. The province being they. So, and then this land and development, this is where the additional planning costs for, we put some extra cash in for planner. And then we also have our annual expense for the Camrose County. And then I actually probably need to put a little bit of extra cash in there as well for like a survey, property survey. But
Utilities brought to a lot that was
public
purchased.
utility lot.
No.
We'll get more into that because I'm like, I need to make a note about that. I almost forgot about that. Okay. Rented buildings. This is just some repairs and maintenance to the where the massage therapist and the chiropractor are.
Do we own that building?
Yes, we do.
Oh.
We're it needs a roof really bad. So we don't charge them a ton of money because it's not a stellar building.
No, we just do.
And that one is a difference. They also pay taxes as well. So the rental and the taxes, when you add their rental and taxes together, we break even.
It's a roof and then that part under the roof.
It needs work. That could be part of our capital discussion.
The historical society fixed their part of it.
We fixed our part.
$100.
There's literally a
But we did
line.
go over a little bit, so it wouldn't go.
So we just put more on. Yeah, we fixed our part.
So it's gonna leak away from your
Yes.
stuff.
It's gonna leave it on your
It was,
stuff, don't ours.
Renters do.
Taxes.
There's
Well,
a
it doesn't
portion
leak
of
onto the
it that are
sidewalk.
recouped through taxes.
Oh,
It's all good.
There's a price company.
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, as far as I'm aware, I've had dialogue with Darlene about it in the past. And so there's a total for the amount of what the rental is, and then the taxes are included within the rental amount. And then, of course, the washout on the requisitions, which is 221, 548, 830. And then the a DIP assessment, which is the designated industrial property. For a moment there, I was having a bit of a brain fart. So, yeah. And that basically is a form of requisition as well, where it goes in and out. Alrighty, and so this one always looks kind of weird because the revenue is not reflected into it. Any questions before we move on to fire? Hearing none?
No, I think we're good.
Alrighty. So the fire budget is also an interesting mix because we are, like, it's a regional agreement with several counties. And so of which Camrose County is the administrator, and they provide us with a portion of funding based on what how our budget lands. So if you look about midway in the listing there of revenues, there is the annual county shared service funding. That is basically an estimate of what we're anticipating to receive as a check from them. So once we get our budget to them, then they usually cut us a check for a percentage. And then they true it up at the end of the year. But we typically, with our firefighting responses and in town fire revenue, you can see where last year it was in town fire revenue at 21,424. We've estimated roughly about 5,000. It's an interesting situation because we bill out, but not always do we collect. It often rolls onto taxes, and then one way or another, we eventually get our money, but it's by a year or two. So if it's a situation where their insurance company, we're responding to a fire and the insurance company pays for the fire response, then we get our cash. If it's a situation where there's maybe not enough damage or it's not submitted to insurance company, then sometimes it'll just sit there and then roll onto the taxes, and then we get our money then. So firefighting responses, about 13,500. Motor vehicle responses, this one, we get a portion of the funding, and then this is where a portion of the funding sits in with Camrose County coffers as stewards for that reserve. And I think we're sitting at about 37,000 in that one. And then annually they have contributions of training. So there's 1,000 pager maintenance. Again, the portion of like the firefighter gear and training, like there's just different areas that they cover as per part of the agreement. And then the dispatch agreement. So, and expenses wise, just covering firefighter insurance and the honorarium fees for the chief and the deputy chief and the firefighter honorarium. And again, it's a ballpark estimate because we just have no idea of how many responses that they're going to go to. Fire services coordinator, travel and subsistence, telephone, and iPad data. And then the dispatch is typically prorated. Well, we pay for the bulk of it and then we get reimbursed from the county. Fire hall maintenance, we just kind of threw in about $2,000 just for some generic repairs in case something goes awry. And then in the general supplies, they often put like stationary hose, jaws of life service. And then this is where the replacement laptop coverage is. And actually, when I was originally doing the figures on that, I had figured that I was only going to be able to cover a portion of the laptop versus all of it. So, right, and then just fuel and truck servicing. And some of these with the county units, we don't tend to budget for because we just send them a bill. They pay for the servicing. Yeah.
So this is a question that will pay it forward for us later on. Are we accounting for the 50% increase in fuel prices of late for the year or?
In this section
Well,
or?
in this section and later
Yes,
sections.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And that one again is a sliding where you could predict so much within, it all depends on the activities that transpire, right? So we give our best estimate on some equipment, and then, we just had some interesting things going on where I just became aware of premium fuel being purchased for certain pieces of equipment that it wasn't necessary. So we've had dialogue.
I just worry that we're on track to see $2 a liter for standard fuel. And that frightens me when it comes to budgeting for
Right.
my own household, let alone for a municipality.
Gotcha. Yeah, but as for fuel, like within the county units and stuff, it's pretty much like we get a lot of that back in our revenue too. So we don't tend to budget terribly high in that area, but it's higher than in the past. So I know with the town unit, it's tricky as well because it doesn't tend to get a ton of use, to my knowledge. And I'd probably have to dialogue more with the firefighters to get more details on it. Where the biggest cost a lot of times is their personal protective equipment. And so in the past, like additional SCBA harnesses and the tanks have been, we have requested that they cover them through their fundraising account, but the head to toe bunker gear, the county covers half of that cost. So basically on this side, we bill for the full cost, and then the revenue component is on the upper section. And so if we do need to carve, a lot of times we just go back to them and say, you're on your own with the harnesses and the tanks. Just because they are higher ticket items. So, but that's also to say that if we can float it through our budget, great. If not, or we want to cut it, we can. And then just training and energy for the fire hall, and yeah. So it's a little bit higher than last year, but nothing crazy. Any questions as we wrap up?
I think I mention it every year, but do you know who invented the jaws of life?
Maltrol.
George Hurst,
Oh.
as in Hurst shifters, the Hurst olds. Aftermarket guy. For cutting race car drivers out of race cars.
Interesting. I learned who invented the chainsaw today.
What was that?
It was the two doctors for delivering babies to cut the pelvic bone.
Oh.
Didn't see that coming.
Hurts a little.
Yeah.
Only been your eyes and my eyes are bigger than the lady's eyes.
I think that's because we're all like, we never have to think about experiencing that again.
Moving right along.
Yeah.
Let the minutes reflect.
So, and on to community services departments. So there is a line here for policing services as revenue, which we no longer collect any revenue. That is exclusively offset through taxes for our policing costs. Building permit fees and animal licensing fines. So here's your revenue for that. And then the FCSS, the provincial conditional grant, and then what the county provides us. And the cemetery, that's a tricky one on revenue as well, because it's depends who provides donations or buys plots. So it's yeah. We had a shining revenue of 3,745, but it's hard to say whether any of the plots that access this year could be already pre-purchased. Hard to say. Promotional items, we haven't had any for a little while there, but by law enforcement salaries. So basically, this is a contract that we have with McDonald Kennel and the Camrose County. So the Camrose County comes twice a month from November until the end of February, and then beginning of March right through till the end of October. I believe they're once a week. And then the Old McDonald Kennel comes usually, I believe, twice a month year round. And building inspector, basically, that's just in case that we have to call for an inspection on something, which gives us a bit of cash to pay for it if we need to. And this is where the policing expenses are. And so it does still reflect the full 2021 billing of 23,763, and then the 2022 portion for the 9 months of 23,555. And so as we get the audited numbers, those will be adjusted. But you can also see where we paid the 4,055.75. I don't know, that one again, we'll get, I'm not exactly happy with how it's kind of working out, but we will get the audited numbers and get her straight. And then the full contribution to FCSS at 58,449. And expenses specific to the cemetery. We just put a little bit of cash there for repairs and maintenance, or whether we're buying trees or whatever it may be. And fuel for the units out there. And usually that one sometimes gets coded to different areas too, so it's not always an exact science. And then tourism, freight, postage, and telephone. This is, I believe, it's an additional emergency operations line that actually originated from the tourist booth, but has the ability to switch over and be functional in the emergency operations center. So whether in the past, we kind of talked about just canceling that line versus paying for it every year. But then in the same token, in the event of emergency, ground line is kind of handy too. So it's one of those things. And then advertising of 3,000 there, where last year we spent 2646. That basically is a combination of the annual tourism magazine, plus there's online real estate agents. It's like an online newsletter that we're a part of. Basically, they approach us right around September, and last year tried to bow out of it, and we'll basically work on getting out of it here as well in the coming years as well, because it just hasn't really had the outcomes that we'd anticipated. And museum, basically insurance and some basic repairs.
Maybe I shouldn't go there, but do you think that the Historical Society would pay the insurance bill if they got it?
Why wouldn't they? I actually thought we did. I was surprised to see it here.
Well, I think we buy insurance for contents, and this is insurance for structure.
They have the money to do
So
so,
that's what I was thinking.
so they should. Send it to me. Send it to me because I'm the chair. I'll take it to the next meeting.
Like
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's just,
I think we should.
Okay, so you can circle the museum insurance, Loretta,
Yeah,
and
just
just
send it to me
say,
and
send
then.
to Jackie.
I think we can take it to the board and see.
Yeah, this is another
If we buy
16
insurance
Yeah.
for inside, why would,
Totally.
and it, I mean, at the end of the day.
Well, and the
And you might get
insurance,
a better rate if it's,
All unified.
yeah.
Well, I don't know that the town wants to go there as far as.
I'd have to double check what it all covers.
Do you know what I would do with it? I would just send you the bill from town of Bashaw. We pay the town of Bashaw. I wouldn't fool around with this because they've got good rates. Because that's the same with like Bashaw Adult Learning. We go through AMA, but we pay our own, we just pay the bill, right?
Yeah.
So I think we should just do that this way. It's
Okay.
owned by the town, so just send me a bill for insurance.
Okay,
Let's not fool around with
I mean,
that.
it's just,
There you go.
they do have. funds,
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
well, and I'm not sure, like, cause from an insurance perspective, how do you put a value on like all the historic items
Well,
too?
we've got our own insurance for that, I think.
Okay,
Wow.
okay,
This is just for the building, I think.
okay,
I just,
okay.
it's not a big line item, but.
It's not.
It's a
It helps.
It's every little bit helps.
Yep. Alrighty.
Actually, I was gonna ask the same question.
Any questions as we wrap up on community service departments?
So basically, the big difference in this section is the policing.
Yeah.
That was downloaded from the-
And that was my only question. And it's like,
And I
she answered it at the beginning.
What? And we're still going line by line? It's like, come
I'm trying to
on,
stay awake.
so exciting.
I know I should make coffee. I usually make coffee for meetings and I didn't tonight.
Which the popcorn, huh?
I'm not a detail. I love the
Yeah.
overview, but.
Yeah.
You know what?
It's
Next
pretty-
year, we can do the overview.
Yeah.
This year, I'm like, for my learning purposes, I
Yeah.
appreciate the.
Well, and I guess for me, it's also good feedback where, okay, are we keeping it as tight as we can?
Yeah.
And really, we don't have a ton of extra pockets anywhere. Like, we really don't.
Yeah, that's really
There's not.
obvious, actually.
And there have been years where we went through line by line to get back to something like this. Teresa just knew that was coming and did
Did it
it.
anyway.
Well, and my typical process is not to present a high percentage budget, like I usually get it down to 2 or 3. But I was running against time too, right? And so, and I just
give us a heart attack.
well, I'm like, this is not gonna be fun to stew over this all weekend, so I'm like,
Is it, I didn't need the things that early, like, do you need it on the Wednesday to get those, like those packages?
Do I need it?
I never look at them till the weekend, do you? Maybe you
I
do,
typically do, but
yeah,
Weekends are enough, right?
yeah,
Weekend is wide.
like, I think Friday's plenty for me, yeah, anyway, that's beside the point. Good to know.
alrighty, so public works, basically some equipment rental, other revenue. Hay revenue, this is at the airport and the hangar leases at the airport. And water supply and distribution, so this is where all of our revenue component is for water, so there's inspections. And then the sale of water, actually I ended up having to adjust our revenue amount a smidge. Because in our calculations, when we did the water calculations, we were predicting about 100,000 cubes of water when we actually purchased 127,000. So the purchasing and the expense side was going to reflect higher than what we were. So I basically made we had 100,000 cubes of water that we were purchasing, and then right around predicting about 78,000 for sales. So the difference basically increased it by 27,000 on each of them. So it's the same ratio.
Mhm.
So I guess it's the best or ballpark, but we are watching for each water cycle. So we're taking a look at what's going through the meters through 1221 plus our metering chamber. So we're matching those up. And then once we actually do the water bills, then we're doing a total of our water and looking at it and comparing the timelines as well. So the last time period was till the end of February, and we had a difference of like 7,000 cubes. But now this next cycle is one of the cleanest, knock on wood, cycles, we're hoping, because there's no water breakages, right? So we're hoping that after discovering those 2 main water leaks that they were pretty evident where they've been leaking for some time and could have been the source of this difference of 7,000 cubes, right? So we're really hoping that this next cycle we can isolate it further. So
is the sale of water bulk, the stuff that we sell at the, beside the, fire hall?
the fire hall and
recycling
then
too.
non-potable too.
Oh, at the. Potable and non-potable.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is our, I should know this stuff. What is our water rate that we charge to consumers?
$3.69 a cubic meter. So, and this does reflect the increase.
Oh, 360.
which it might be off a smidge because we had one cycle. We had one cycle or one billing that it wasn't included in, so.
That's, we're budgeting on selling 145,000.
The base charge is in there too?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, stop messing with me.
We're all getting swimming.
My hair's gray enough as it is. Thanks.
Spray park.
Well, that was at the end of the street over there, over by Poliag. No.
Subterranean spray park.
Yeah.
A little cool for it, but. Right, moving right along. Sale of water bulk, we're seeing some increases there. And then just generally other revenue.
Mom, come May 6th, there'll be more.
And then the septic receiving station, I bumped that up a smidge just because we, well, with one of the Stetler lagoons being closed down, I know we've got an additional contractor for sure. And there just seems to be more interest in accessing our septic receiving station.
And we can
It's-
handle that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say Stetler County seems to be in a real pickle with that, so I was wondering if we would take some of their effluent.
Yeah, we take shit from all kinds of people. Septage.
Is that a-
To move that BRG town.
Pardon?
Is that a rate that we should be
I
reviewing?
think so.
We bill it out at $3.70 a cubic meter.
I have no idea if that's a deal or not.
It's quite pricey.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
It's more than we charge our residents for septic
for a
services.
septic, yeah. So, but again, it's been that way for a while, so. What's that?
If you're the only game in town.
And again, it hadn't been reviewed for a while, so it's certainly something we could consider doing. So we can circle that, I guess, and we can review the rate. Yeah. And just go review rate.
We seem to be spending quite a bit of money on grinders and pumps and.
We do a lot for that.
That isn't specific to the septic receiving station, though.
Is
Or
not-
Patrick.
Oh,
It's lift station 2.
oh, okay. So it's not tied to this particular.
It's all part of the same system, but a different location. So remember, we went into that nice little brown building
Yeah.
over by,
But-
It had the
but
bathroom
all
in it?
goes Through there, right?
no,
Yeah,
Oh,
the stuff that they're offloading goes through, no, it doesn't hit lift station 2, no.
it goes through a grinder on site there and metered.
Yeah.
I just, if that's something that should be.
We've really
Yeah.
gone into the gutter on this one.
Well, I hope stuff's not going in the gutter. We have a problem then. Alrighty, and then other sewer revenue, which I'm not sure if that's specific to, like, just if we rent out that might be in a different code.
Loose change.
May I, sorry, Brian, yes, you're correct. The stuff that leaves that station goes to lift station 2, then goes out to the liquid.
Okay, so it's going
Yeah.
through the grinder.
It does,
which
yeah.
It's a major
Is
expense.
failing because of usage.
Yeah, because we had there was a business in town that offloaded some stuff from their facility and it jammed up this station, and then we're still dealing with it on the other end in lift 2.
So again, if it's a component. that-
So it does travel.
more
That's the
use
direction it
because
needs
more,
to go. So it is passing
more
both stations.
Then maybe that rate should be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because
Well, our sewer rate is definitely low, even on the industrial. It tops out at $215 every 2 months. So for
I
an industrial
recall,
user,
saying I think we
Yes.
need to investigate that as well.
yeah.
So I just, that's something that maybe we need.
And flush truck revenue, this just represents what our participating partners contribute as well for their component of the flush truck costs.
And so some of our partners hadn't fully committed to this year, right? Is that?
Well, for now, it's status quo, but it'll depend on the demise of the truck where we need to. So it's, I guess, in some ways, we should almost estimate lower, but we'll do some adjustments moving forward. I'll probably start with that one too. Yeah. So, and garbage collection, disposal and other charges, this is typically what we have, like what residents pay for the service, the revenue that comes in. And then last year we had recycling revenue of $175.62. That was for the meager offerings of the province for the recycling grant.
I could donate some bottles.
Well, everybody a little bit helps, or maybe moving forward, we look at implementing a charge for recycling, hazardous waste recycling, because it actually, I think it was right around $4,700 last year that we paid.
Do we do that program every year?
We change it to every second year, and actually the cost on it is probably, we'll be able to see it here shortly
Okay, great.
on the budget here. Parks revenue, and this one I'm scratching my head on. I think it's a combination of, because it wasn't ball diamonds last year, because we didn't even operate ball.
No. Oh, we did, but we didn't charge them anything.
No. I think it was just some. I don't know. I'd have to double check that one, whether, because I can't see it being camping.
Well,
Like from Bunnock, maybe a little bit, but
no,
nothing
yeah,
that,
and I mean, fall tournament rental, but
yeah, it's not. So I'll have to double check that. Expense wise, for emergency preparedness, there's some in there for freight, postage, and phone of the EOC. And then the shop, safety equipment and clothing. So just various purchases there. Freight, postage, and phone, the on-call cell phone, radio licenses, and the foreman phone, and some charges for freight. And then repairs and maintenance, some very ongoing things. And general supplies, just a whole mix of stuff. And some of these I haven't went through with Patrick, so there might be some changes on there too. And here's your code for gas and oil. Gas and oil, and I thought there was another one for fuel, but anyway. And then the shop, gas and power. And road, streets. So this is where we get a breakdown of all kinds of stuff. We've got some course fees for streets. Basically get staff trained. And there's travel and subsistence treats where, in case they have to travel for training. And a lot of times we just throw a bit of cash in there just because, or for freight, postage, it varies usually what they order is coded to that department. So, but we haven't had to order anything specific to the shop. And general goods and services, there's a whole mix there. Sometimes there was electrical connections for decorations. So I guess some of the decoration connections, the outlets are needing repair, replacement. And then this is where listing of all the equipment and the various charges. So repair, possible, like planning. And then there's also the fuel. So, and some of them really, they had some strange things going on where you look at, well, the flush truck, I think what happened there is like mobile 420 flush truck. some of the fuel was miscoded to that, because I'm pretty sure we didn't cover as much, or we budgeted higher and somehow there wasn't like some coding issues. And then there was, it's, again, we kind of look at the whole department, we do our best estimation for each piece of equipment, but then the whole department, it all balances out. And this budget area, the construction, maintenance, supplies and repairs might be a little bit different than what yours is. Just because I'm pretty sure that I took off some of the pothole patching material, large areas. I originally had that at 16,000. So my version that I've got on here, I've knocked it down to 5, just to leave something in there a little bit. And then my notes about offsetting some of the repairs of 16,000 into roads and streets as a capital, to reduce our bottom line increase. So that changes that code to like 8,500, or that, yeah, specific to construction, maintenance, supplies and repairs. And then grounds, materials and trees, we got about 2,800. Sidewalk replacement, originally I planned for 12,000 in there, and the budget itself here that I'm looking at, the revised version, has 2,000 in there, and then the 12,000 was included into those other working notes that we kind of had distributed via email. But, and Stu, I can arrange to send you a copy too. Dust control, and then the energy. This is the street light. Campus energy, the street light costs 54,000. And I've left it right around 54,000 again, because we have an aggregate energy agreement. So our pricing should stay stable right through to 2024.
That's nice.
Yeah. And then just some airport repairs, insurance, parts and supplies, and again, the energy, power, storm sewer repairs. We've just kind of threw in 1,000 in there just in case something comes up or doesn't go down. Too easy.
Obviously not.
And then basically under water supply and distribution, just some additional course fees and seminar attendance to ensure that staff continue to have their certification or are working towards obtaining. And some travel and subsistence there, freight, postage, phone. And then we have the Alberta Wastewater Operators Association memberships. So half is coded to water and half is coded to sewer. And then the repairs and treatment distribution. So my amount on here is probably significantly different than yours. I have the overall code sitting at 34,105, which our water main repairs were at 48,500, and that is the actual that we've paid out so far. And so I've adjusted this amount to 10, but then offset the other, well, still a full 48,500 into those working notes adjustment. It behooves us to have about 10,000 just in case something transpires towards the winter season of this year. And then the other one was asphalt patching water breaks. I originally planned for 10,000 in the budget. So the working papers I've still left at 10,000, but I've also put in 5,000 into this operating budget just in case, like, so whether we need it the full 15 or it gives us some flexibility, because really we're speculating on what it's going to cost to repair these areas, right?
So does that also include the sidewalk repairs for those areas?
We have a sidewalk section
okay.
coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. And then there was a tank cleaning. So the water reservoir was scheduled to be cleaned this year, and it's been done. It was $9,500. And so they emptied the reservoir in one day and left us without water. Hey, Patrick. They actually go in with divers and suck all the dirt out.
I'll never live it down.
You thought they emptied the reservoir.
I'm like,
I would have thought that too.
well, they had to dump some water. Yeah.
I have a sample of it. If anybody, I call it my Bashaw snow globe, a little jar full of the sediment. So, and then this is new as well, where we've got a maintenance agreement or performance maintenance agreement for our generator and pump servicing specific to water. And so this agreement actually between water and sewer is $9,500 for a year, 95-ish. And what it does is it covers all of our water pumps, generators and whatnot. And then we also have a sewer component where they come in once a year and do inspections on the units. So we built that into the budget as well, just to, for ongoing maintenance. And I think there was another segment in there, 2412500. Okay, so primarily what I pulled out of there was the water main repairs of 48,500, and then the asphalt patching water breaks for a total of 58,400. But again, it's not reflecting that reduction completely because there's still 10,000 for water main repairs and still 5,000 for patching. And then the vertical turbine pump on our water treatment plant is also requiring a rebuild, which is 12,340, which is not included in the budget, but again, in the working notes that I provided. So, and then we have just the insurance and the purchase of bulk water for resale. And so basically, just the adjusted figures there for purchasing. So originally we had predicted to only purchase 100,000, but we are expecting that we'll probably be purchasing more. So it didn't make sense to to estimate lower than what our actuals were for the previous year. General goods and supplies. We have some curb box replacement water meters, and then the water meters as the water meter replacement project, that's actually covered through the federal gas tax fund. So that's why there's only the 3,000 in here for water meter replacements. And then the energy, so the power and the natural gas, we're actually hoping to see some reductions in those areas, of at least the power, that once we get that turbine replaced or rebuilt at the water treatment plant, it should run more effectively versus full steam ahead all the time or inappropriately, right?
If I go back just one moment to general goods and supplies, I was just wondering, is the Neptune upgrade a one-time cost, or is this something we'll incur?
It's an annual fee.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I should have relabeled that. So the upgrade happened last year, and it was actually, we had to pay the annual fee plus a belt clip charge. So it was right around 4,200 or so, I believe, from last year. But the annual fee for the software and stuff itself.
It's like a subscription.
Pretty much.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of handy because we can actually log on to your water meter and tell you how many times you peed at night. Or the water ran. We'll leave it at that.
Unless you just pee off the back down.
It's gonna show up on some meter, I'm telling you that.
So there's a lot that's
This comic moment brought to you by.
There's the comment of the night.
We're still screen sharing. Yeah, so anyway, sanitary sewage and treatment. Again, some course fees in that area, travel and subsistence, memberships again relating to sewer, septic station and repairs, and then the repair and maintenance for sewer, that one was quite a bit higher, where I'd taken off the lift station 2 repair of $6,400. I've kind of offset that into our working notes. And then the lift station grinder from 2019, this is basically replacing a reserve that we purchased a grinder in 2019. So this is an area where we could, instead of opting contribute to repay the reserve, you could reduce this code by 5,000. Or there's also the septic portion of the maintenance contract as well on there for $4,912.50. And then lift station 2, the emergency repair that was $6,710 was also removed from that code and put into the working notes.
It was Pooch the technical.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, you love that, huh?
Literally stole words out of my
It was seized, not moving.
Yeah, you caught me on a golden moment there. Note to self, make sure my skills are sharp when I put in my terminology.
No, I love it.
So is this reserve piece, the replace reserve, have you
Mhm.
cut that in this supplementary that you've given us, or?
It's not put into the supplementary.
Okay,
So this is truly at council's option. So a couple of years ago in 2019, there was a grinder that we purchased of $21,000, a lift station grinder. And basically this grinder, we were very concerned at the time that it needed to be imminently replaced and was purchased. So when you think of that one grinder at 21,000 and where we have a service contract for 13 pieces of equipment at $9,500 for the whole 13 pieces of equipment, it starts to make sense. But that 21,000, the grinder, I'm told, sat on the shelf, to which we utilized it this year, just only recently. So,
And we didn't have a choice because the other grinder was not doing his job and letting stuff get into our Laguna. We just spent a lot of money reconditioning, so
It was pooched.
it was pooched.
yep. But we have another one waiting in the queue that they want to, the one that was pooched, that was removed, could actually be serviced for
12, I think it
that
was-
one's 12 as
I
well.
think, yeah, somewhere around there.
And we're basically planning to budget that one for next year, so
So
that we have an option.
this
Well,
is a
no, it
reserve
could be
we
less.
should be refilling.
Pardon?
This is a reserve we should be replenishing.
A council at the time had requested it, and I believe I'd have to double check. I think we replenished 10,000 so far, or will shortly. We didn't want to take all the money out of the account while we.
But those could be taken out of capital.
Well, they're replenishing a reserve. So the operating reserve, it was utilized for the purchase in 2019 of 21,000. So this is saying, hey, we're going to collect 5,000 each year and put it back into the reserve. So it's an option. If you chose not to, you could reduce your budget by 5,000. And we're like with the capital budget, I will have some totals as to where we're at with our reserve and stuff anyway too, so. And just general goods and supplies, air, power and gas again, adjustments. And then we're on to garbage, where the garbage contract typically costs us 62,000-ish. And then the tipping fees that we pay for our garbage to the Camrose County. And then ongoing landfill monitoring fees.
So we really make almost nothing on what we charge residents on garbage.
No,
So
we don't. We usually break pretty close to even. And like it's meant to be cost recovery. So, yeah. And then the recycling, well, this is where the toxic roundup was, and you can see where last year it cost us $4,266.15. We budgeted around 3,000. We're not intending to do a toxic roundup this year. So, and I guess moving forward, maybe, like I know I've had some notes whether we should be creating a billing on an ongoing basis for recycling or toxic roundup on our utility notice, where we charge a small fee that equates into 2 years revenue for the toxic roundup. That could be something. Because like I recognize recycling is important to residents and stuff, but it, like the grants have substantially reduced. It used to cost us $2,600 and we'd get $1,200 or $1,400 cost recovery, like a grant. And now it's just not.
And that's actually an idea. It would be a minimal charge.
It'd be like a buck a bill.
And it would take over 2 years.
Yeah, you spread the cost over 2 years. So if we plan for about $4,300 or whatever through all
What
the
types of
bills.
things are included in toxic roundup? Like we just talking about paint cans and oil, or is this
Fridges.
refrigerators?
We have an ongoing, like their spring cleanup that we do where we collect like fridges and white goods and stuff.
Do we charge for those?
Yes. But it's just, again, cost recovery, whatever. Like we take.
This one is like paints and oils.
This was paints, oils, fluorescent tubes, spray cans. Spray cans and
I think that's an added value.
it's like a lot of it is the cans and the fluorescent tubes.
Yeah.
And not only are we charging like or paying for transportation of dangerous goods, but we're also paying for the disposal charges per unit and stuff too, right? So. And then we're on to parks. Repairs and maintenance, 5,300. Insurance, and then just washroom supplies, paint, cleaning. We put in a little boat here for putting the fountain in and out and checking, replacing the hoses for the aerator and stuff. And then we have a basic estimation for flowers and dirt and.
We could have got a used submarine from West Edmonton.
Well, actually, there's one that's being dragged on right now.
What was that?
There's a lot of yachts being dragged on.
Oh, okay, yeah,
They wouldn't even fit.
Well, we don't have to get the
It doesn't have to
biggest
be
one.
a super yacht.
Gee, I thought that was even high.
And that's where I'm moving. Fresh food.
I was just paddle out there on the dock thing, flip the dock out there.
Public Works would be at the little trout pond every day.
Every day, yeah.
That's where we have our council meetings.
New town office.
I like it.
Yeah, true. Whatever floats your boat.
Oh,
Sorry. Too much to go sailing riddle. Anyway, beautification. We have the full amount of beautification on here of 18,000. And so I might need to, I guess, double check. Well, I guess with the 20,453 last year, that was their carry forward or unspent that they basically utilized for expenses. But we've for now left the full Fortis franchise fee of $18,000 in here as applicable to beautification projects.
and that's a 2% franchise.
Yes. And then the community center, basically, there's some charges for a static IP. And so ExploreNet is basically like a cost recovery thing where we initially pay for internet services and then we get a reimbursement. And the community center repairs and maintenance, these are basically, there's a maintenance contract. And then the portion of, we had a bunch of the rooftop unit, their computer boards all replaced several years ago. And so that 8,180 just is the remaining cost of that project. They opted to pay it by monthly charge for 3 years. And then the furnace cleaning, I had predicted at 2,000, it actually just got the quotes and it's probably closer to 37 or 3,800. But yeah, it's never been done. So on the flip side, if we book it every year for the next 3 years, you get a 10% discount. Anyway, yeah, we can have additional dialogue about that, but the insurance and then just some general funds for supplies, whether it be filters or whatever kind of comes up around there. And then we pay for like the between the power and gas, we split it actually with the community hall board. So this represents what our cost is. So it's an expensive building.
So the whole board is a committee of town council or not?
I'd have to double check, but we have a lease agreement with them for the building. So they lease the building and obtain the revenue. And they also take care of managing the bookings. And then they hire the caretaker and cleaner over there.
So
And
all the income goes to them and they pay for the cleaner and the, what else?
Half the utilities.
half the
Half the
utilities.
utilities, okay.
And we're moving to water recovery with the,
They are paying for water and garbage over there too, water, sewer, garbage.
I just was checking, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's it.
I just didn't
Often-
know how that worked, because it's always seems, I always thought it was owned by the town, which it is, but
It
they're
is.
leased, so they're leasing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so they operationally lease it out for rentals as well.
Hmm.
And so it always struck me as strange where they get all the revenue and we get most of the bills.
Right.
And like any of the maintenance costs or whatnot is all
So do you
ours.
know why we did it that way?
That happened before I even moved to town.
Well, they call it assisted delivery. And so in a hypothetical sense, realistically, all of the utilities, because they're generating the revenue, should go over there, but it's just not a strong business case scenario, even with the play school and the library and whatnot, renting and providing rental fees to them for those facilities. It's still not a strong business case. Unfortunately, it's just not
we're
realistic,
subsidizing it, so we have it basically.
pretty much.
It's not like they're rolling in cash over there.
No, it's been kind of slim pickings for bookings for them. So, yeah, and like the public works section is one of the most big sections of our budget. Any questions as we wrap up? Need a quick break, anybody? Alrighty, and with our recreation tab here, a lot of our revenue is a bit higher than, we're budgeting it a bit higher than previous years, just because previous years it was a portion of the year. And so we're kind of still estimating conservatively. And I'm expecting some adjustments to these last year actuals because we had some deferred revenue in the form of most grant funding that we use for offsetting some of our initial lack of revenue as well, because we only operated for a portion of the year and stuff. So that was like for 2021, there'll be some adjustments to those actuals. But for now. As for revenue wise, we're pretty close, we feel, but again, it's quite conservative too.
On the budget side, or do you mean like in 2022?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause like in the past, minor hockey was usually over 30,000. But it's, again, they've also started requesting like the season start earlier and whatnot too, so. Usually like a weekend or so.
Is it possible to not start earlier and save ourselves some dollars? I realize it's contentious, but I'm just asking.
It's,
Isn't that first month the most expensive month? I mean, September is
It's a lot.
and
yeah,
Like-
that could be,
do we,
cause it could, well, we don't run in September. We don't
okay, but.
formally open until the beginning of October, but they usually try and get as the earliest weekend they can. in,
But you're firing it up in
Yeah.
September.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be.
Where it's still warm.
Oh,
About
high
20,
20s.
yeah, 2 years ago, we
Yeah.
had 30-degree weather the last week.
And I
even
always-
Halloween's been warm.
Yeah, for the last 2 years.
And
I
it,
struggle every year, I'll be honest. I
Yeah.
struggle With how early,
how early we fire up the plant and get things going.
because it is.
How long does it take to put the ice in?
I think about a week or so. Maybe a
So
little
what-
longer.
It's a hurry.
Depending on the temperature too, like you say.
If it's warm outside.
Warm
then
outside, it's gonna take longer. Then you gotta worry about condensation in the building. You're gonna, there's, you're running fans and stuff like that to try to.
So is it just a desire to have it open earlier, or is there a reason to have it open earlier?
The speculation, or from what I've heard from stakeholders, is it gives them an opportunity to run skills and like weekend skills training and stuff. beforehand.
You do charge them extra if they.
Yeah, they are charged, was it 10%
10%
extra or
more.
something?
But that
For-
hardly
Yeah,
covers the.
Interesting, to do like a temperature provision, it has to be a certain temperature.
So the other question
One
I
week,
have
so, yeah.
is, if we assess the building,
mhm.
how long is it liable to still last us?
That one is challenging because like there are some like it's an old aging building.
Yep.
And with an old aging ice plant, so we remove the freon from the ice plant and tank it all so we don't lose the freon.
Yeah.
But then we're up against where there's, parts and things that are aging within the ice plant. This year, like one of our big expenses is the boards around the outside. Like there's nothing, like it's kind of getting to the point where there's nothing to screw the screws to on the backside. Like that it's the wood is deteriorating in the posts and whatnot on the backside. So then every year you're going through and you're screwing in and screwing screws, to make sure that they're not sticking out and unsafe and stuff. But it's like, I've only had a very cursory understanding, but we have issues with the corners and the shape of the arena. Like some of the corners just aren't designed well for proper ice removal and ice coverage. So it tends to build up in the corners and whatnot. And like structurally, like the beams and everything sounds like it's all good. But we just have
So
ongoing.
the frame is, it's the
The
interior.
structure is good, yeah.
The bones.
The
Yeah.
bones are good, yeah.
And the biggest drawback has been, well, the Zamboni room, the cinder block area, that's the Zamboni room. I do have an an engineer's report on the building. Some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't. But that section is questionable for ongoing stability. Like there's some areas where it looks like it's shifted or cracked
Well,
above.
and you showed us that.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could strap that building and bypass that.
Yeah, I don't know, like this year, we had a freeze up in that room.
Yep.
So we've installed an isolation valve and a furnace in there, isolation
The
valve for
furnace-
the water and a furnace,
We
right?
haven't put that in yet.
Okay.
was a little too much money, I thought, so.
Okay.
We lose tens of thousands of dollars on the arena every year though.
At minimum, our shortfall is minimum 50 grand. But if we did the business case study of as like for the past 5 years, what we put in there. Because we put in, you know, $40,000 or $50,000 worth of lighting, ongoing repairs to the ice plant. We upgraded the concession, like the concession upgrade was $12,000. Like it just, and then the maintenance room reclamation that we did the other day or the other year was 18,000. The roof we just did, the shingled the roof, 42,000. Like it's, but then there's drainage issues around the building
There is,
too,
yeah.
where the water just collects on the backside and stuff, which is, we just make do and manage, but like there's a lot of operating costs. And I guess like at what point in time do you have the dialogue? Because the business case for the facility is not a strong one. On a good year, we get 112 kids. That's counting just kids participating. On a bad year, we're down to 79. So like it's a very expensive building for, and then I've had people approach me as well where, you know, if staff don't want to work in the facility, then maybe we should consider contracting it out. But then there's challenges with that too, where is the building going to be maintained and kept to the same standard and safety and whatnot for operators or users? Or, and then how would that look like for collecting the payment of the revenue and the bookings? Would we still do that? Because administratively, the time that it takes for dealing with the bookings and changes and whatnot, it's quite consuming.
I don't know that this is an appropriate place to talk about it, but I'll just mention it briefly. I did have a conversation with an individual who has a program for skills development that would be interested in looking at renting out consistent ice time through the winter, like 6 hours at a time, only one flood during that 6 hours, and then he would.
And we
book his
wouldn't
own
allow
clients.
that actually. It's usually what, a minimum of, I don't know the frequency. Because like within the booking, it's usually one flood within 2 hours.
Yeah, and I mean, this was just a minor conversation, but I mean, if somebody's looking to book like 6 hours twice a week.
I'd like to see us, and I know this isn't part of the budget, but
Yeah.
maybe down the line, I'd like to see us, you know, look at a business case, for instance, and also what forecasted, how much it's gonna cost to keep that building up. Because, you know, there's other communities around us too that are facing the same thing, and maybe we should start looking at it now and not everything, the ice plant breaks down completely and we have to put in millions of dollars into it.
It is a challenging dialogue because, you know, you have Clive and you have Alex and we're all half hour from each other.
Yeah.
But then it's like, how do you start that dialogue and which is the winning community for the prize arena
Well, and actually.
and funding, right?
But even I don't think it necessarily has to be in a community. It can be on a quarter section in the.
Right.
And everybody drives there.
Yeah.
I mean, there doesn't have to be.
It
any
doesn't
winners
have to
or
be.
losers.
The town is the winner.
True.
Well,
But I just
Well,
think
I mean,
it's
for what
telling.
revenue
Yeah.
they get off of it, it would, they don't, it wouldn't be a winner.
If the ice plant goes, you don't have an arena.
No, we
And the
don't.
cost to get the
Yeah.
ice plant back up and running, you're better off starting from
And you know,
scratch.
it could happen anytime.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah,
I do think as part of a business case, we have to consider what the ripple effects in the community are, right? Does hosting a tournament generate more
Yeah, but
business in
that's what you
town?
do in your business case. Yeah,
Absolutely,
totally.
right? I
Yeah.
think it needs to be all encompassing, but
Agreed.
I'm with you in that, I think if we're bleeding $50,000 a year as a minimum, we need to start getting innovative.
I suggested roller derby, but nobody was in on
Nobody's
that.
listening to you.
No.
Do we get sponsorship dollars at all, like for the advertisements on the boards, or like I was just thinking about hearing, you know, there's nothing to screw to, like, is there a long-term contract on the advertisements in there, anything like that?
It's not on the
It's on
ring
the
boards, it's up on the wall.
Right, but-
All the sponsorships.
As a for instance, could we move to board sponsorship?
Could be.
We tried this year, I think
Well, I think there was, what was it?
Fortis.
Fortis.
Yeah,
We tried to actually do
But
an adhesive banner on it. It didn't,
yeah,
it probably needed to be applied while it was warm.
heat, you need heat, yeah,
Okay,
so.
That puckboard just doesn't lend itself to adhesives.
no.
It's
No.
too smooth. Check the race car volume.
Anyway, I know I'm interrupting budget, but I'd just like to, maybe on a future agenda, we could talk.
I think it's
about
budget discussion.
creating- I think we could talk about creating a committee that invites those other two communities and look at what
Mhm.
potential possibilities might be, because they've got to be in the same situation as we are.
Mhm.
Can't
Well,
imagine
and they
why.
typically operate quite a bit differently where they're volunteer driven and they get a contribution from their municipality.
Right,
So I think one is operated by the ag and then
it could be,
the
yeah,
other
lots
was.
of exercises to know what it is, but
Yeah.
I think that, the thing I think that's important is to start conversation about it. And secondly, to talk about, potential and begin to research that long before something goes wrong.
Yes.
Right,
Really, and I know that it won't be a popular conversation right off the bat, but you know what, there's lots of times where you can find, like Kyle used the word innovative, you can find some innovative solutions that nobody's
Yeah.
thinking about, you don't know what you don't know.
yeah,
And I think it'd be worth looking into.
It's a discussion we start now, right? So it doesn't surprise us
That's
when
right.
that does later.
That's right, yeah. So that's what I'd like
Gotcha.
to see, anyway, that's only a second thing I only have in this.
alrighty, and then there's basically the expenses around the arena operations. Just some training in there and then fees and travel and subsistence for training. Freight postage and telephone arena. And then the ball diamond, we also have some of the recreational, so there's a ball diamond racket sports code. For some repairs and maintenance to nets or replacement or whatever. And then repairs and maintenance arena where, again, we have a maintenance contract there and then planning for some furnace replacement, because I know there's at least a minimum of 2 furnaces that are kind of aged out. That, yeah. And then the Zamboni room door needed some repairs, and then ongoing ice plant repairs where we always like to make sure we plan a little bit there. And then ball and racket support, sports supplies are put there in this code as well.
Do
Which
we
I
also
probably,
own the pickleball courts?
yeah. And I'm thinking that like with ball diamond sports rep, we might need to, well, we've got 2,000 in there. I'm hoping that will help cover the shale that we're planning, but I have to double check. Now that we're gearing up for being operational and like our energy, power and gas costs. We bumped them up a smidge. We'd probably, it's really hard to predict. We figure we're better off making sure that we have enough versus not enough. So. Yeah, and that concludes recreation. Not sure if you have any questions. Then everybody's favorite page, budget by department. And with those adjustments that I mentioned where we took out quite a few of the repairs, like the water main repairs and the sewer repairs, the additional costs there, and then some road streets repairs. So we removed quite a bit of that, which the total of those repairs, including like some of the additional quotes that I have for like the water treatment plant and then chopper pump rebuild for lift station 2. So we have a total of $133,622. And this has, did I put in 15,000? Oh, yes. The lift station 2 motor or generator installation, I put in roughly about $15,000. I don't know what that one is right now. I haven't got a full quote. So, and right now with that lift station, there was so much condensation that was built up in the oil that it's the motor itself is done for. And so we're getting pricing as to which is going to be the more cost-effective way to go, whether we replace the motor with a new motor or if we put a propane or a natural gas powered generator or something.
Yeah.
And then there would also be fencing costs too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So these costs could qualify through MSI capital or reserves. And right now we're sitting at $143,000 and $143,323 for MSI capital funds that we have potentially accessible. So however, it's one of those things, or reserves could be another possibility. I just need to get confirmation on what our reserves are actually at after the audit. With MSI capital, our typical habit has been save it until we get a big project. Then we got a nice little lump sum of 400,000, or because in the past the contributions used to be upwards of 280,000, and so it didn't take too long to get enough to spearhead the next project. And our typical project was usually about 1.2 or 1.3 million. But with this kind of smaller amounts, it's going to take us longer to save it cumulatively, or we may need to consider borrowing or whatnot, or other sources or ways to fund some of our infrastructure repairs. But
Well, eventually infrastructure has to be repaired.
Yeah.
You have to plan for it.
I think that, but I mean, the newfound, windfall of oil revenue is so
It could
fluid
cycle.
right now that
Yeah, it's
you may
So-
start seeing money come from the province again.
perhaps, yeah.
as we get closer to an election, there might be some enticement.
That wasn't my read at the minister's session, though. I mean, when he spoke of the replacement for some of these programs like MSI, I mean, he basically said, if you have an idea, bring it to me, but otherwise, it's going to look similar to this. This reduction of about 40% we've seen MSI over recent years. And that worries me because at a certain point, when does a municipality of our size become unsustainable? And so I worry that we're going to see the opposite. We're going to see further clawbacks and not that oil windfall. And I think my evidence of that is this policing download that this government has insisted we pay. I mean, that's a huge chunk of our budget. It's
I
just
do
going up and
think
down.
that there's gonna be an election, though. I do think there's gonna be some carrots dangling.
I mean, my union thought that when they were negotiating last
True.
time around, and that didn't work out for them.
But that does beg the question, I see there aren't very many communities smaller than Bashaw that are left on their own. And we are kind of on the cusp of the next size that will be.
In terms of towns, I have about 5 of them smaller than us.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, we are on
It's
the,
not that many, is it?
we are on the small end now. And if 10 years from now, it may be small to survive. That wouldn't surprise me. I hope not. But reality is what it is. We are definitely on the small end of municipalities now.
Well, this community's been stable in population for decades. I mean, that's the real advantage we have is that 850 mark. I mean, it's been what, 40 years or so.
That's correct. Yeah.
So circling the dialogue back around, my apologies. Like with the adjustments and the rework the projected increase basically dropped to 3.48. And so I wasn't sure if you guys wanted to have additional reductions be considered within it, or if you have a specific percentage that is a little more palatable where we could. So realistically, the main areas that I could see where further reduction could happen is opting not to contribute the 5,000 back into the sewer reserve. Potentially some of the cuts within the fire department for the SCBA where we can request they cover those purchases through their fundraising account. And I think they were sitting at about 4,000 or 5,000 in their fundraising account, or often beautification is reduced or potential.
I can live with 3.4.
What does that equate to? An increase, an average dollar-wise increase?
It would all depend on your assessment. So it's like what we could do is bringing this budget back within the next meeting. I can put the figures into the working papers, generate what the bylaw would look like, as well as we do a spreadsheet that gives you low, medium, high for residential, low, medium, high for business, and shows you what the potential percentage is. So, and it's usually, I can't remember the split, but it's almost like close to a 70-30 split, where 30% is usually residential and, or no, 30% is business and 70% residential.
And so you
No,
also,
the other way,
so you also can just,
move the pie.
you can move, so you can put a bigger increase to commercial or a bigger increase to residential. Like you can play with the split.
And it all depends, like
That's-
the one
we've done in the
year
past.
we had a mayor fairly, like the year that UFA rebuilt and like the cost of the assessment value of with their rebuild to their gas tanks and whatnot, it resulted in a nice little pump of assessment. And so what happened was they ended up having to pay more in taxes. So that kind of helped offset the overall tax pie kind of thing. But in COVID year, within the COVID year, we opted to we knew businesses were going to struggle. So we left the ratio set so that the businesses would experience a little bit of a savings, and then the residences experience a little bit of a hike, because we were anticipating or expecting that the businesses were going to struggle. Right, so you can move the ratio around.
And the assessment piece factors into this too. It's possible that our rate goes up and your assessment goes down, and so it comes.
It's the biggest comparable for assessment. It really is the value of your property versus the mill rate. And so the way we use to calculate everything is we look at our operating budget, and then we look at what our assessment is, and that's how we come up with the mill rate. And so they're all variables, and then we apply that mill rate to your property value, which your property value could go up, or it could go down, or it could stay the same. But even if your property stayed the same, you could.
$814,000.
So. Well, according to this one, the revised one, 785,890.
No, that was last year's.
Oh, right. Sorry, my bad. Yes, 814,000.
Right, the question we're at is, are we gonna shave off $5,000 somewhere and or 7 or whatever? I am generally pretty comfortable with this number. I talked to a lot of people over the last summer, and I think even before inflation got out of control, before the price of gas got out of control, before insurance skyrocketed on a whole bunch of people, I think the average resident here kind of expects about 3.5% increase. It's typical, it's normal, this is a pretty clean budget from my estimation, so I'm impressed by all the work that went into it, and very few gripes.
Well, and there's still, like I said, might be a little bit of tweaking, because I've got pricing on the furnace cleaning for the community hall.
Cindy, it is hard I've been in that chair where you have two businesses, you've got a house.
Lots.
And you got lots, and all of a sudden you're looking at a $10,000 tax bill.
Yeah.
And then it turns, you don't look at it at a 3% increase, you look at the dollars that you gotta come up with, and it's a lot. And I appreciate where you are, because I was there for many years.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, then it's also involved $350, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go buy a bunch of lumber from.
Thank you. Don't forget a building permit.
We'll actually do it.
$350 in sales, it's profit.
Yeah.
It's
3.48 is a lot better than 11.88.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna use that as my.
Yeah.
Sales pitch.
So you're saying we should release the 11.88 first?
I showed a couple of people, I'm like, have you seen the agenda, and what we're reviewing, and circled that number at the bottom, and
We
watched
looked
the
at
freak out, and then
heroes
said, but actually Teresa's a hero, but she bad.
Well, I ran the numbers just to see what they would look like, and it was gonna equate to a $500 increase typically across the board.
Can you imagine?
And I was just
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, this is
Lynches.
not popular. Everybody be putting their houses up for sale,
Well,
moving.
you know, the problem is that, because I had family that lived in Calgary, big city, and they come here and the taxes are 3 or 4 times higher than the city.
Well,
Very
even
high.
us coming from Beaumont has very high taxes.
Yeah.
Very, very high taxes.
We just don't have the economies to scale.
No, we don't. It's unfortunate.
So I guess if it's okay with you guys, I will put the full amount of the furnace cleaning of the community hall in there. And then I'll also bring this back. Also kind of to show you the breakdown on how the increase will impact. And then you can have a additional dialogue if you're comfortable with it. And then I'm not sure if I will have capital budget figures or not. Like for the other component, where the other items being offset through the MSI capital or reserves.
Okay,
Ready? Thank you.
moving on.
Do we need a motion for anything or not?
Until the final.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just bring it back to you.
Communications and yeah, you need communications policy request. Me, that's you.
That's me. I've outlined a whole bunch of the information on the notice of motion. But the general summary of why I'm requesting that we consider this really is a result of our training. Both the legal, can't remember the name, farmer or something, no, whatever, as well as George Cuff stressed that this is policy all municipalities should have. And I didn't think a ton of it initially, but what we've been seeing on social media over years, basically since COVID has hit, is more and more people are turning to new forms of communications technologies. They are expecting different standard to accessing information, I think has been standard in the past. And with that comes some pitfalls as well. One of the concerns that I've seen is that we're getting these pockets of online communities, and as a social studies teacher, I call it voluntary balkanization is the key term, but basically the general public term would be like an echo chamber, where we're getting, you know, these pockets that emerge and they just repeat the same story again and again and again and again, and it ripples and it grows. And we've been seeing this for, you know, probably 20 years on the internet. It probably started with like fan communities like Star Trek and automotive communities or whatever. But as it pertains to governance, I think we've really seen that uptick since COVID has begun. And one of my concerns is that as we look at things like Facebook, for instance, people turning to the official channels of a municipality or of a government, they are using that as an opportunity to at times unload. They're using it as an opportunity to vent their frustration on an official channel or platform. And I know certainly I've seen a few times over the tenure here so far where we've had comments deleted from our town Facebook page, as a for instance. And so the broad outline of why I think a communications policy is important is, one, just to comply with the MGA, this idea of good government, but protecting the brand, protecting the image, protecting the reputation of the town of Bashaw is a consideration, but also protecting our staff in their jobs and in their functions as they are performing work online, as they are performing communications. And not just online, traditional communications I think are important here too. And so with all of that just came this exploration of what exists out there, what is happening, and remembering that we are kind of a corporate, not kind of, we are a corporate body. So what exists out there? And so I started looking and exploring and very quickly was able to find a number of communications policies, some of them specific to social media, but generally speaking, they were, broad-based. And so places like the Village of Alex actually has a detailed, actually it's about 2 pages, social media policy. Panoka has information on proclamations and letters of support that's very specific, so people know what they can ask for and what they can't ask for. The County of Wetaskiwin, not that far from us, has a 2 or 3 pager that just kind of outlines what they will accept from residents as formal communication, what they won't, and what's tolerated and what's not. And so as you look at this, and as I look at us as a corporate body that could modernize, you'll see in the notice of motion that I've kind of rolled in several of these things, including protecting the brand, including some of these Facebook's voluntary balkanization, including things like offering letters of support. I've lumped that in as well with the freedom of information we receive from the lawyers, and that information is quite interesting to me as well, because of course there's sections of FOIP that basically say any and all communications that we give as elected officials are subject to FOIP. And that includes if we send them on our personal devices or through our personal accounts. And so that was an area of concern to me, because I couldn't imagine handing over my phone to our FOIP officer and saying, here, please enjoy, sifting through this and going with it. I think it'd be incredibly costly. I think it'd be time consuming. I think I would feel like it was an invasion of privacy. So ensuring that we are complying with FOIP, I think, was an essential purpose of this notice of motion. I also want to ensure we are compliant with another fairly recent piece of legislation, which broadly is called CASL, or Canadian Anti-Spam legislation. And it's quite interesting that as a corporate body, if we go so far as tagging an individual, even in a reply on Facebook, or Twitter or whatever social media that we happen to use in the future, that actually could be considered violating CASL. Something like sharing a post from a resident actually could be considered an anti-spam violation that carries with it monetary penalties. And so as I looked at all of this, my sense is this is something that we should look to create. When is a good question, but I've identified 5 areas that I'd like to see in a policy, which is just best practices. A clear social media terms of engagement, which would include things like, if you're a jerk to our town staff, we can delete you, your comments, we can block you, be a good human being. I'd also like to see us, through policy, consider what training of communication tools might look like. I'd like to consider what issuing proclamations and formal correspondence, including letters of support, might look look like, because I suspect that's letters of support or even congratulatory notes might be something that we see in our term. And I'd like to see the policy regularly reviewed. So that's the first half of it. And I also note that given my concerns with FOIP, and I do want to quote from the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner has a document, and it says when conducting official business, municipal council should use devices or accounts assigned to them as part of official duties. Using personal email accounts, text messaging, or instant messaging creates a number of record keeping and FOIP compliance challenges. It goes on to say that municipalities' policies and training may inform how you must conduct municipality business electronically. To err on the side of caution, ensure personal, municipal, and email accounts are separated or use separate devices to properly document municipal business and help record keeping. Service Alberta goes on to detail in its FOIP primer for municipalities that the things that we have control of, for instance, email, some of those things, whether it's a recommendation or what have you, may actually need to be filed.
With all due respect, if I may draw some attention to what our current practices actually are, and as actually the FOIP representative for your organization, I have yet actually to receive a FOIP inquiry to date. And the thing about it is historically, council member emails were not actually publicly disclosed. They were basically, everything was channeled through the organization. And so our main means of communication is through council meetings and through public attendance at the council meetings. We do have a public participation policy that we engage in council reviews regularly on each request for decision, where it provides feedback for council to say, hey, you know what, we want to engage the community on this. And then it also outlines where if council members feel that additional dialogue with the community is needed or necessary, then they basically request me to generate a communication plan to set up an event or whatever that communication plan would look like. And so we also regularly have the media attend our council meetings, and so therefore they provide the information outgoing back to the community. And so for our staff efforts to provide our newsletter additional outgoing feedback, it presents a bit of a duplication in energy and resources. And our Facebook page is primarily for outgoing information only. We do not engage individuals or provide responses. We don't answer to messages. And what typically happens if the page is shared and then a dialogue happens, then that's totally out of our control. However, in the past, I know of when we were advertising, let's say, for example, a skid steer training, for example, which wasn't necessarily a requirement, but we were basically hosting it. And so then there was additional commentary and questions from individuals for clarity. And we ended up actually having to delete their comments in order to provide adequate information on there. And that was the only way of being able to get the follow-up information out there. There was not intended a slight in any way, shape, or form to these individuals. We, in the past, used to respond to Facebook commentary on our Facebook page and things like that. And truly, it's not the best use of our time, because we could be chasing around responses on any given thing or trying to clarify to individuals through a social media campaign, where truly we do not have the resources to respond to social media inquiries and dialogue.
And that could be worked into a policy that.
Yeah.
That our Facebook page is outgoing.
And we actually have a commentary quite some time ago that it's like, this is for outgoing information only. If you need additional information, send us an email.
Right on
or
our Facebook page.
we did quite some time ago, but we probably could reiterate it. So, and that's not to say that some clarity could be put into a policy and whatnot. It's just, I guess, the timing of this, when significantly it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to generate the tax bylaw. Plus, I've got new staff that are going to be implementing and doing this process. Like it's a little bit of an onerous thing unless you have some drafts that you want to proceed forward. Truly, my best energy and efforts at this juncture in time, I feel, are best dedicated to providing you with an operating budget. Plus, we're required to do a 5-year multi-year operating budget plus, or actually it's a 3-year, and then there's a capital budget that's required too. So some of our municipal accountability program follow-up is also required a timeline here too. So I guess if it's important to council, I can certainly re-strategize what's on my palette, but in the same token, we are also going into where we just put out ads for additional public work staff and summer students. So I guess it's a matter of triaging and prioritizing the need.
I don't think it needs to be done, by the next meeting, but I agree, this is something we do need to work towards. And, it's like we've noted on several occasions in the past, just because we didn't know about a problem, doesn't mean it wasn't there all along. And the fact that we've been lucky this long that it didn't bite us in the ass is no guarantee how long in the future we'll have either.
Right.
Well,
There you go.
I can see, as Kyle said, some towns do have a 2-page or a very, sounds like it's not like an overly long document, but at the same time, I totally agree. And that you do have to prioritize your work. And I don't think personally, from my part, I'm not comfortable putting a time on this, because I don't know what your work schedule is. And for me to put a time on it, it has to be done by, 3 weeks from today, that I would personally not comfortable with.
Well, with all due respect, in my notice of motion, I do give a timeline, in fact. And the timeline is the first meeting of September, which is certainly, once the motion is on the floor, it is the prerogative of the floor to be able to amend that motion. So if that timeline wasn't adequate, certainly an amendment can be made. I also did want to point out the email one, because I do think we are going to be in a world where we are flight. I compiled a list of municipalities of similar population, going from about 554 up to 1345. Bentley has email that's public. Bowden, Daysland, Eckville does not. Hardisty does. Irricana, Killam, Legal, McLennan, Oyen, Rainbow Lake, Sedgwick all do. Stavely of 564 population does not. Thorsby does, and Viking does. And so I think as added context when we're talking about what other municipalities of comparable size are doing, I've pulled the numbers, I've looked, and the best practice that's being followed by municipalities is to do this in case they are flight. And so certainly I think a policy doesn't need to say that we respond to things on social media. I'm not advocating for that anywhere in my notice of motion. But I think a policy needs to be laid out, and if for no other reason, it gives staff the backing that says, what council said, that we don't have to engage with you on these terms, that, if you're going to be, sniping us on Facebook, that we actually don't have to engage if that's what the policy says. And so I actually look at it as an opportunity for us to use a little bit of our clout to provide that cover for our corporate body, and whatever the policy is, I haven't outlined anywhere what those bullet points are. I mean, I suggest to identify the best practices. Nowhere do I list what those best practices are. Having a terms of engagement, I think, is a good practice to have, because it tells people that, in certain circumstances, if you're posting racist garbage on our page, we have a right to remove it. And here's the policy that says so. Here's the duly elected council that said exactly this. And quite frankly, I think my request for a policy requesting consideration of training requirements, I think we're in the 21st century. I think one of the best uses of my time as an educator was to become more and more familiar with new communications technologies. And I think that's true in every business and every sector. And so certainly if I were to make the motion, it would belong to this body, and certainly if we're not comfortable with the timeline, that would be something that I think could be amended and debated.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Communication is a skill set. There's no doubt about that. And not everybody has that skill set. Running the community page in Bashaw, yeah, it is. It's not fun. It's not fun to have to remove a post, which I have to do literally weekly. Somebody puts something up that doesn't belong there under the rules of engagement, right? So yeah, it is a skill set. One thing you can get away with on a town page is to block all comments and then offer an email for them to send their questions or their concerns in, which we can have an info at Bash. I think we already have one, or something like that, right? So that nobody has to actually engage with the page. But from a communication aspect, and I know we talked about this earlier, and it is a skill set, even creating brochures and things like that is a skill set. And I think that there are some things we can do. I agree with Kyle, we can do to lighten the load, or first of all, to give a good communication to the community from our, even because sometimes our town office takes a hit, and it's just that they just don't know. People don't know what they don't know, right? And so it would be good to have really good communication out there for people to understand, because if I can explain it, it almost always calms, almost always. So I don't know what that looks like, whether that's a contract with the communication somewhere down the road, maybe next year when we see what our budget's like. But I do believe that we have, I agree that it's a good thing to have. I'm not certain that our town office's skill set, first of all, the skill set is one thing, but also the time. So I think we just have to work that out, whatever that looks like. But I agree with both Brian and Kyle that it doesn't have to be up to Teresa to do it all. And I think what we could do is lengthen the time and look to maybe a contract, somebody that Teresa can just, or Letta can pass it off and say, this is what we need, and let it go. I'm not sure, but I'm just thinking about things like that. But I do think it's important too. And I agree that right now we have half of our population still wants paper and magazines and newspapers, and the other half wants nothing to do with that, and they want everything online. So all corporate bodies are in the same boat right now, having to do both, and that causes extra work on our staff. So I think it's important to look at, but I think it's important to recognize that our town office may not be the ones to deliver it. Maybe approve it, but maybe not deliver it. So
does our email server have capacity for 5 more accounts?
It does equate into additional charges, like if they're at town of Bashaw, because our email is hosted. And so then that way, basically having a hosted email, there's a charge for each email because they basically have the email go to them first, and they basically filter out any spam and whatnot. And so I can certainly get pricing for what that would look like.
The other
And
option
cost.
is Gmail, like I have.
you can do Gmail under what it says, like towncouncil.com, right? Like you can make a Gmail up like that. I've done it 3 or 4 times now.
Yeah, mine's just a real simple one. It's just Bashaw.council.
Yeah. Right. Well, but you can actually do one that says Bashaw
Instead
Council.
of at
Instead of at
Gmail.
Gmail, yeah, you can. And it's
Well,
free.
I mean, I know in my past life, I've had my phone and my email foot. It's not fun.
I never have.
Mhm.
Never thought about
It's
it.
a messy process.
Yes, it is. It's not fun.
No,
I tell you that much.
yeah.
Mhm. So with the notice of motion, is this going to be reflected as the full motion, or is there a shortened version? Because for a motion register, this is pretty onerous.
Well, the motions, there would be 2 of them would be at the bottom, the rest is standard boilerplate. I'm getting the sense of the room that right now, one of these could perhaps be moved, and the other we're awaiting information on. So instead of chunking them, I would be happy to sever them. And so I would move that council direct administration to draft a communications policy pertaining to its communications with the public via traditional electronic means no later than the first meeting of September, that will identify best practices for staff to engage the public, set forth a clear social media terms of engagement for the public's engagement with the town, outline minimum training requirements within the corporate body for use of communications tools, including social media, establish requirements for issuing proclamation and formal correspondence, including letters of support and congratulatory notes, and lay out timelines for review of this policy.
Is September a reasonable timeline for that?
I guess, Kyle has given some examples of some that he feel that might be acceptable. So as a governance component, you know, I could certainly forward a couple that might be potential recommendations, and that would save a lot of time, energy, and effort.
R&D, rip off and duplicate.
Well, I have 6 ready to go, so.
Examples, yeah.
Any discussion on the motion?
I don't know that I'm still comfortable with the time constraint. I think, yeah, I'm still not comfortable with that personally.
Is it better to say by the end of the year?
Yeah, that would be fine. Or, I mean, at the end of the day, as Teresa being the council's one employee, I trust her.
As a stimulating 640-page document.
I trust her that she would provide the information as soon as it is works into her timeline. And I don't see that I would put it, because as her employer, I'll be honest, I don't really have a real comfortable handle on what is involved in her job. I mean, when I was an employer and had employees that I was every day in control of, I knew the expectations, I knew what they could do and when they could do it. I do not feel I have that expertise in this situation, so I don't feel.
I used to have 21 people that reported to me across 6 different offices. I wasn't in all 6 of those offices. And so I relied on the people in that office to tell me what was going on. The interesting part about the dynamic of council and CAO is there's really nobody for us to go to. So it kind of,
Yeah.
you know, there's just that expectation that, you know, Teresa's working hard. Which, I mean, I don't think anybody's calling into question by any means. I want to clarify that. So,
No
I
worries.
mean, I do get that and understand that, because I've been there. I don't know what's happening in 6 different offices every single day, you know, and that makes it difficult, but I mean.
And I understand that, I believe that this policy, there should be one.
Yeah.
I understand that.
You know,
It's not that I'm not in favor of it.
Yeah.
I don't see that. And given also, I have a lot of faith and trust in the counselors that we do have, that nobody's going to be going off on a Facebook spam.
You never know.
And so I suppose in that light, I thinking it's not as urgent as possibly it would be in a different situation with different people involved.
For sure. I do think too, you know, I mean, looking at Kyle's computer here, he's got, you know, 6 different examples. So I mean, the good part is that we're not asking Teresa to reinvent the wheel here or anything like that. So like, I go back to, with the end of the year, be comfortable for everybody. That way it just gives Teresa a little bit more time to kind of go through the ebbs and flows of the seasonality of what crosses your plate, on top of some of the outstanding things that are already on your plate.
You know, though, I agree, but there's one thing we have to think about. This year, we may have, we may have the need for some really good communication. And so I don't know if the policy is necessary for that, or whether that's just something we'll deal with when the time comes. I'm not sure. But we do need to do something. We can't not, because, well, and you know what, even just, I don't know who I talked to about this, but even the water rates that, you know, Kyle, you had some concerns about low-income families. Well, there's things we can send out to help them understand how to save that extra money, right? Don't run the water while you're doing the dishes, or whatever it is, right? There's things that you can give them tips and tricks on how to lower their water.
Town is a great one on leaky toilets.
Yeah, things like that. No, but
I
seriously.
hand it out all the time to people.
Yeah, but those are the things that that are helpful.
Yeah.
We have to make the hard decisions, we make them, and now here's things you can do to help
It
mitigate it.
softens the blow.
That's right.
Kyle, would you be all right with amending your motion to that timeline?
I don't think I need to amend it. Certainly anyone would be welcome to amend it.
But we'd all be good with the end of the year timeline? So who actually amended it?
Do we need a communication policy to do anything, Teresa, or can you just choose to do anything you want when you want to, right now?
We just have a standard practice. And then like mainly our communication is done through the procedure CAO and Council meetings. And then the only thing that really missing as
Kyle says.
is just the social media aspect, where maybe just another, where on our page, we could put some commentary about this is our process and this is, you know, that it's for outgoing information. If you require additional information, feel free to, here's the email, here's the phone number.
Yeah, I see there's a little comment here. It says the Town of Bashaw Facebook page acts primarily as a channel for information sharing. If you have a question or concern or complaint, please send it directly to our office.
Is there an email there? Just have to add that.
Right above, there's the admin at Town of Bashaw and the phone number. And then, isn't it? Oh, fun.
She's used to handling that stuff.
Yes.
Or she just passes it to me.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
What are we voting on? Sorry.
On the motion. So an amended motion
The amended
is
motion.
no
Motion Kyle
later
made.
than the end of the year,
Yeah.
or
End of 2022. All in favor? Carry. Committee and staff.
Sorry, just going back, and then the second motion that you had here, the one regarding the email accounts. We're going to wait on Teresa to get some pricing on that.
Well, I suppose you are correct, Councillor Oram, that we shouldn't just leave that to her. If we're going to direct the CAO, there should probably be a motion of sorts. And so I think the motion would be something along the lines of council directing administration to research and report on the cost of creating dedicated email accounts for members of council. If I'm not out of order on that.
Any discussion?
I think that's fair to at least get some pricing and just see where we're at.
Yeah.
Sure.
All in favor? Motion carried.
sorry, the motion made.
Kyle.
Sorry to cut you off. So Chair.
Committee reports. Thanks.
Stuff.
And stuff. Library meeting on the 28th. And our little library is just bumping along. That was the only meeting, but I did get a couple of emails that I wanted to report on. One was from our old friend Doug Griffiths.
13 days.
Yep. He's invited us to a community leaders camp at the Jasper Park Lodge, April 25th to 28th. And he's got speakers coming, and it all seemed like a great thing until I got to the price. So glad you're sitting down. $3,450
A person?
a person.
If you went earlier, you could have got it for 2,000.
Is that the 14th way to kill your community?
Yeah.
Was that for 2 weeks?
No, April 25th to 28th. That includes meals, instructional content, and all course materials. That does not include your hotel room.
The one thing it was though, is that you could have applied to the Alberta Job Grant, Canada Alberta Job Grant for that, which would have paid 2/3 of the cost.
Okay.
But we're late anyway, and it's all, I don't know if you can still go now.
I was very sticker shocked when I saw that. I go to a lot of very similar conferences to that. Farm Tech in Edmonton is one that I would put absolutely on par with anything he's gonna put on there. And it's roughly 1/10 of that.
Well, and it seems to be a trend where if it's hosted at Jasper or Banff,
It's very
that
high.
it's either high or the meals aren't included.
And oh, there's one from CN about their vegetation control on our line.
We've seen them out quite a bit lately. There's been trucks there. Unusual.
Yes, my kids are excited to see him every day that we cross the tracks.
And I've also been getting repeated emails from Colin Bushman to join their club.
RCMP.
No, he's not RCMP, he's Canadian Police Federation,
Right.
National Police Federation,
Sorry, horribly off.
but that is pretty horribly off. And that is all I have to report. Deputy Mayor Gus,
I have nothing. I have nothing. Nothing.
Councillor Norby.
I did meet with Jamie Purick around small towns and lack of federal grant support to small communities. And he suggested that when we write grants, that we send them to his office. I'll not only review them, but likely send a letter of support with. Excellent. So that was good. Next week, we're meeting with, Barb has its annual general meeting, which I will be attending. And then this Thursday, I'm presenting with Christine, and I'm presenting at the LGA, the local government, so the CAOs, around our community service model.
Oh, excellent.
That's my stuff.
Councillor Oram.
I only had one meeting this time, which seems rare for me. I had a CAO meeting on Friday, April 1st. We did a review of the 2021 audit. That went very well. No major issues or concerns. What we did discuss and what there is concern over is the Roselta Lodge and Bashaw Meadows. Roselta Lodge has 23 units vacant right now out of their 105, and that's the largest vacancy they've ever seen. Bashaw Meadows, of course, has the two different levels. One is a DSL, which is designated support living, and the other floor is the lodge, where it's more independent living. The lodge is currently sitting at 55% capacity. We've got 33 units total, 15% are vacant. So this is of concern. They've started working on ways to fill the units in Roselta. They're hoping kind of once they've seen some success with that with Roselta, they'll push it over towards Bashaw. But they do feel like attracting into rural communities is one of their biggest factors as to why there is vacancies here. They also do believe that, again, COVID has played a role in that people are wanting
A
to.
huge role.
Yeah.
Not just a little one.
Yeah.
Because people are not happy with the restrictions.
Yes, 100%. And so they asked me, they said, have you or council received any comments, feedback? Do we need to solicit some information from the communities about what we can do to help fill the Bashaw Meadows vacancies up? So if anybody's got any information for me to take back to CAA, if anybody's got any conversations that they've had with somebody, you can either have the conversations or you can direct them to chat with me. I'd be happy to do that, to take that information back to CAA. And then, of course, so that was Friday morning. As of Friday afternoon, Bashaw Meadows is on outbreak status and is on lockdown again.
Like 2 weeks.
Yeah, and so that will take them through Easter. Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah. So,
Ooh, tired. And none of them are very ill. There's 5 of them. 3 of them have no symptoms and 2 of them are minorly sick.
yeah,
Wow.
Yeah. One's my brother-in-law,
But
that's
but
what I
is that
know.
policy over all of CAA? It's not specific to.
no,
I
it's,
assume it's all.
yeah, it's all of CAA. Yeah, so they've opted, as well as a lot of other lodging authorities and the like, to keep those restrictions in place, even though AHS has recommended easing them.
So it's a CAA policy, not an
Yeah.
AHS policy.
Yeah.
People aren't happy and until they aren't up,
Yeah.
good luck. Because we're getting people here that absolutely won't consider it.
Yeah.
They wanna go to Lakeside or
Yes.
Heritage, they do not wanna go
And
there.
they're at pretty much full capacity, Heritage and Lakeside.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
They don't wanna go to.
Is there more vacancy upstairs than
Yeah.
downstairs?
Well, downstairs is DSL4, right? So DSL4, you don't have a choice. You need nursing care, you have to be there. And if you wanna be in your home community, you gotta come here.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's the problem. And it's, I get they're trying to keep people safe. But I mean, we've gotta learn to live with this virus.
Yeah. Well, I do have another meeting on May 6th. That's also a busy day for me at the store, so I will be attending via Zoom. But if there's anybody that, you know, would like to provide me some feedback to take back to that meeting. Oh, yeah, I figured as much, or would like to attend with me to provide some information. I'm happy to take that information back. Yep, that's all I got.
Councilor McIntosh.
On the good old April 2nd, I engaged with the EMS service planning current state and engagement and completed their current state survey with respect to the ongoing issues with EMS, ambulance dispatch, etc. Basically the black hole that is known as Edmonton. And I heard some concerns from people in the community and even those in my extended family. And so took advantage of the opportunity as a resident that gets to complete that survey, which most of our residents do not, and just outline some of the concerns I've heard. So that's it for me.
Excellent. Orman Taylor.
Well, it's been a busy couple of weeks with maintenance and trying to get all of our equipment up and running and running efficiently. The ice is now out of the arena, and so we just did a one pass with the floor machine, getting it ready for ball, I guess, for Friday. So hopefully that can start happening. And street cleaning, we started that this week, or last week, I should say, sorry. So that's on the go. And the grinder we put the new grinder in lift station 2. Lagoon, we replaced a pump down there. Yeah, I think that's all I got. So far, anyway. Oh, sorry. Yes, I guess we'll be starting up the ball diamonds here pretty quick, so get out the old weed whackers tomorrow and give them a overhaul and get ready to go.
CAO form.
Just notification of funding was provided to the Family Community Support Services, basically to the Youth Foundation and BDSS. And the arena access for homeschooling is still outstanding to follow up by July. The flush truck will be looking at booking a meeting with the partners just to refresh, because there's been some questions back and forth through email, and it might be just a faster way to determine which way do they want to go. I'm not. One minute I get answers. Well, Rosalind is totally on board. Golf is wishy-washy. So anyway. And then the railway crossing maintenance, we're basically looking to set that up for the latter part of this month. And then the waste removal contract, I've been comparing the two, and we've got the proposal, but the proposal is requiring that some of our large volume cardboard businesses basically sign up for a rollout, like a bin type service, versus having the boxes kind of packed at their back of their offices and things like that. And so basically, like, looking at revising the bylaw to dictate that. And so I plan to bring the information forward for dialogue. And our waste bylaw is from like 1999.
Oh, boy.
So it's kind of outdated, but then it's challenging too, because a lot of the examples I'm kind of been pulling up all have like rollout carts and stuff versus, structures along the alley. So I may just have to refurbish it to include, and it doesn't actually even talk anything about recycling. So yeah, but anyway, so there's a bit of legwork there. And then we'll also be bringing forward potentially next meeting, whether we'll look at, do you guys have a preference on the municipal development plan, intermunicipal collaboration framework, or strategic plan for the next council meeting?
Yeah,
Nay.
pick your favorite.
Okay. And then emergency preparedness, we're just updating documents in order to get them forwarded. And still seeking a suitable third party to assist with the development application. And we have received a submission, a hard copy submission of 700 pages plus as of last Friday. And so it's presenting its own challenges just because of the volume. And they're declining to provide digital copy just because of its proprietary nature. So I'm still doing some follow-up. I will get some more information to you on that one. Yeah. And then just several training. There's a training session on the FCSS provincial entry system. So you have to sign up for a My Digital Alberta ID in order to access their data entry system. And then everybody's going portal, where our benefits portal, there was training as well. And then we did an interview on the 28th for a public works staff. Unfortunately, they just weren't suitable. And then on the 31st, basically information on digital utility and tax notice delivery. So the ability to email out tax notices and stuff. And so it does present an appealing service. We're just looking at pricing and whatnot. And of course, the initial setups for some of that stuff is a little bit prohibitive. Items working on, we continue to have a staff absent, the arena is closed and the ice in the process of removal. And then several staff are absent due to illness. And then basically budget, payroll, grant reporting, audit follow-up, training staff. With the side of the safety codes internal audit. Got it done on time this year.
Good job.
And ongoing inquiries, follow-up for data processing, benefit, payroll, etc. Payroll just seems to be continuing to be regret. But anyhow.
But you could be like me, and the other day I remembered at 7 PM that I forgot to do payroll.
I just barely remembered this.
Your staff are glad they remembered.
And you get a free 2x4. And you get a free.
But I sent the e-transfers out and they were accepted within 3 minutes of sending them, so that tells you something.
Mr. Chair, I move we accept committee and staff reports.
Read my mind. All in favor? Carried. No correspondence, no closed meeting, next meeting.
So we got the 19th, and then just wondering if there would be some availability within the final week of April, just in case that, unless you want to chat about it on the 19th, but the auditor, I basically like to give them an option for one last meeting towards the end of the month in case things aren't progressing as.
Would it make sense to schedule the auditor the same night as the CN meeting?
On the 26th? Yeah, we could do that.
I also just realized we have a youth foundation meeting on the 26th. Okay,
Just a lowly director.
just the council rep.
You're the counselor, you're the one that'll be in real trouble.
Like
We
7
have a
o'clock.
meeting on the 26th. Haven't got it.
Well, we were just penciling in CN for the 26th is kind of what
Teresa sent us an email today with like
selection.
8 dates.
And so I was just, I haven't quite got back to you guys on about the 26th, but the 26th seemed to be the most appealing. But CN was just getting back to me.
This is a weird question. How long are we anticipating going through the audited financial states?
Depends how many questions you have, Scott.
I thought I reduced my question load by a lot tonight.
Sorry, no disrespect intended,
Really good
counselor.
attention skill.
Wow.
I think, well done.
That's true. But is it a fairly quick process typically, or?
It usually is, because most of the times it's a lot of accounted Ds, unless you feel inclined to like follow through all the notes all the way through, and it basically, they pull it apart, put it together and present it in 3 different ways, right? So
I know the Cala one that we did the other day took maybe 20 minutes.
So I mean, even when we do the whole budget of the Alberta Teachers Association, and which is a large budget, that's like a half hour.
Yeah.
So.
yeah, usually 20 minutes, half hour,
Okay,
depending
now
on the
let's-
questions.
Let's fill up. Let's do an NDP while we're at it too. Let's not.
Let's not see.
So April 26th,
Sure.
and then we'll just aim to tilt the auditor for 6, like how much time do you think we need with CN? An hour?
Or should we do the auditor first and then?
Well, I have CN.
Like the
kinda-
auditor better.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Auditor at 6 and CN at 6:30,
Okay,
7.
okay, so auditor 6.
Auditor at 6, CN at 6:30, they can damn well wait.
Okay.
They make us wait enough times.
That's true.
Long time sometimes.
Okay.
Alright,
Their
Sounds
streams are
good.
getting longer and longer.
Nice.
9:10. Use the magic
I
motion.
make a motion to adjourn. I get to do that.
Thank you, Jack.
One motion today.
Favor.
Okay, let's do.
Efficient. We hit both.
Perfect.
Nice, little
Thanks, Patrick.
just cut out.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I've had more Senate meetings like the last
I
3
know you
months than
have.
all
Hope you don't have a
my-
small heart attack when you see those numbers coming in, that's all.